Welcome and good morning, everybody. We're going to begin Giving Black 2022 with an opening prayer. Please join me. Eternal and everlasting Creator of the universe, thank you for today. Thank you for life. Thank you for love. And thank you for inspiring everybody to come together today to talk about and reaffirm our commitment to generosity. Bless us all, we pray. May we have love, peace, hope, and joy in our personal lives. And may love, hope, peace, and joy be exemplified in all we do, in all we think, and in all we say. In Jesus' name, amen. I'd now like to read AgentsC's equity statement. I acknowledge that I am living on Turtle Island, colonized land taken from the indigenous people by European colonizers. The colonizers brought my people here as slaves from Africa, my ancestral home. I acknowledge that I am a settler in this land. Through colonization, we've been part of a system that obscures the stories of darker-skinned peoples while prioritizing those of the European narrative. Settler societies often silence Black and Indigenous voices and control narratives, leaving out or misrepresenting our histories, our cultures, our traditions, and contributions to Canadian society. AgentsC seeks to revisit the past, ask difficult questions about justice, and explore multiple perspectives towards acknowledgement, atonement, reconciliation, and healing to foster equity. We are committed to collaborating with all communities, including Black and Indigenous organizations. As part of this commitment, AgentsC aims to grow our Equity Philanthropy Fund and commits to invest in financial and pro bono support in Black and Indigenous nonprofit organizations. Martin Luther King once said that life's persistent and most urgent question is, what are you doing for others? Good morning, Giving Black family. Welcome to Giving Black 2022, the virtual conference. Thank you for joining us. I'm one of your hosts for today's event. My name is Olumide Akerusi. I'm founder and CEO of AgentsC Inc. And we're here to learn and share what we know about Black philanthropy. Our conference theme this year is From Mind to Heart, Diversity and Corporate Community Investment in the Global Black Community. As we get into this subject and today's meeting, just a few housekeeping notes for you. Please note that you can switch on the closed caption function so it appears just below your screen if you need it. Also, we want this to be a celebratory event. It's a family affair. So please join us throughout the conference by posting your thoughts, your opinions, your feedback in the chat box. And we'll, from time to time, be plugging into the chat box to see what you are sharing with us and sharing with each other. We'll be paying attention to the conversations emerging from there. I want to give a shout out to our sponsors, some of whom have joined us today. The Avast Foundation, TELUS, Neon One, and of course, AgentsC Inc., whose generosity means so much to us. Now, I have the pleasure of introducing my fellow event hosts, the fabulous Leanne Hanaway and the delightful Tracy Deans. Leanne and Tracy, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's
So happy to be here. Very excited.
Me too. Me too. It's exciting. I was looking forward to this day since last year, I guess we could say. Yeah, it's great to be here this morning with everyone. Um, Thank you for joining us. We're so excited to share with you, what's going on today. Leanne, what are you feeling like this morning?
I'm feeling, like I said, super excited, and I'm really happy to be in this group called family. I really love that Mide called that out at the top, and to really dive into philanthropy, from the African diaspora and a Black perspective.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Leanne. And so you posed the question, Tracy, to Leanne. So I feel I ought to pose a question to you there. What are you
Okay.
looking forward to today, Tracy?
Yeah. What am I looking forward to? Oh gosh, what am I not looking forward to? But specifically, the segment on Africville. I think, being able to meet a couple of the folks previous to prior before today, just the excitement is building. History is so important. Being able to be rooted in the foundation of what your history is, and then you can kind of know where you're going. So I'm really looking forward to that session, amongst others, for a number of various reasons. But Leanne, I'll let you answer the same question because I want to ask to Mide for sure. But Leanne, what are you kind of looking forward to today?
Well, definitely the amazing poetry and the griot hour, which I'm really excited
Spiders,
for.
truly.
And of course, the corporate panel talking about philanthropy from that perspective, I'm also really excited about. It's almost like you said, there's nothing, nothing not to look forward to. Uh,
Exactly.
yeah, yeah.
And Mide, what about yourself?
Oh,
If you could choose, yeah,
everything.
I knew you were going to say everything.
Everything. But can I tell you, the wellness, the Isimi
Mm,
hour, or the Isimi time we have together, I have a feeling that we're going to be going through a roller coaster of emotions in the Giving Black conference today, and to kind of tail off the conference with, getting back to kind of settling our minds and reaching a place of peace and wellness. Absolutely looking forward to that. I think, also, I love poetry, so I have to also say that I very much looking forward to hearing Radell and Nicole share their gifts and their talents with us.
mhm, mhm.
It's interesting because we have 300 people registered for today's event. And I want to ask you guys, what do you think listeners will be able to take away from our time together today?
Oh, that's a good question. I think and I hope that folks will take away a sense of community. And it's kind of where we're starting with philanthropy, Black philanthropy, and being able to recognize our stories, share our stories, tell our stories, and live in our stories. That sense of community. I really hope that folks can take that away today. What about you, Leanne?
I really hope that folks can take away that it's all relational, like we're all a part
Mm,
of philanthropy, that word is really accessible for everybody, sometimes when you think about that word, it kind of seems like it's only the people who have a ton of money
mhm,
are
mhm.
involved in what is deemed to be philanthropic, but really it's the generosity in all of us. And again, like just really hoping that everybody can see themselves as a philanthropist, and in particularly how we as Black people are also involved in philanthropy.
I
Mm-hmm.
love that. I love that I love that you said, it makes me think of how to define philanthropy and or how to redefine philanthropy, right? Gosh, Bide, what are your hopes and takeaways for the audience today? Or
I,
even yourself, What do you hope? Let me ask that question. What do you, Bide, hope to take away from today?
what I hope to take away from today, I think, is a reaffirmation that no matter what race, class, gender, identity we are, so it really doesn't matter that much when we compare it to our humanity. And as part of our humanity, I just fundamentally believe that generosity and philanthropy are some of the best ways that we can show that. And I know that these are universal, global, cultural principles. Every culture has a way of giving, of sharing, of loving. And so I think a reaffirmation of that through today's conversations is what I'm looking forward to. I know that as a Black man and we as Black people, we often spend our time debunking, demystifying, and dismantling stereotypes and prejudices about how we embrace our culture or how our culture is reflected. And seldom do we have conversations that link our culture to generosity. And so I would love for Black people especially to feel totally encouraged by today's conversation because we're going against the grain and against the narrative. But for everybody else also who has joined us, to learn something new about how we as Black people interact with generosity and philanthropy. One of the most common questions I'm asked is, how can we, by nonprofit organizations, is how can we engage more Black donors? And, I don't necessarily have a direct answer to that question, but I think the Giving Black platform is an opportunity for us to come together and learn and share. So hopefully folks will take some learning that is shared today with them and begin their journey of thinking about how to embrace and engage Black people in nonprofit or even for-profit programs that are really going to gear towards building and strengthening community.
Amazing.
Very powerful. Very powerful.
I also hope, folks take away, there's a togetherness, right? We're in this together.
Yeah.
There's not one sole person sitting in, Toronto, in the US, in the UK, in South Africa. Help me in the chat. I don't know where you guys are from, but I'm guessing now.
Australia, we got
I see Treaty One from Winnipeg, Manitoba. That's my hometown.
Thank you.
Rwanda,
thank you.
London, Ontario.
Thank you, Leanne. Thank you. It's global, right?
Global.
Philanthropy is global. Black philanthropy is global. So I want everyone, no matter where they're at, I want them to realize we're in this together. It's a global thing. And I'm really excited actually about our first guest. Little personal note, Randell is our Ontario's Poet Laureate. And I had heard about him for some time, but actually didn't realize that we grew up in the same neighborhood and even went to the same high school, clearly at different times, because he's a lot younger than me. But Randell Ajay, the poetry that we have coming up next by him, I really want everyone to kind of just listen to the words, really important words. And I always kind of think of words, music, storytelling. That's, music is one of my most favorite things. But when you strip away the sound and you really start to listen to the words, you're kind of left with the poetry and the spoken word. And there's messages in that. So I really want everyone to kind of take it in. We've got 3 poems from Randell this morning. And please listen and share your thoughts.
Thank you.
Hello, good day. It's really a pleasure to be here. I know I wasn't able to join you all in person, but I'm here virtually and excited to be a part of this incredible initiative. And before I started, I just wanted to say something that really inspired me. I thought about the quote that that was kind of presented or used for this presentation. Life's persistent and most urgent question is, what are you doing for others? By Martin Luther King. And, it really makes me think about what it is that we're here to do. And I believe that we're all here to serve, that we have a purpose, that we have something that we are offering into this world. And for me, my sense of purpose and how I use my gifts to serve is through poetry. And so I'm going to be sharing a series of poems that really speak to what it means to live a life of purpose, what it means to truly be able to, give back. I think if we are all supporting one another, then we're all good. Everyone's going to be taken care of. So this first poem I want to share is called I'm an Artist. And it just shares a little bit about my journey coming into being a poet and why I do the work that I do. I am an artist, and I don't have any time to be silent. No time to allow these words to asphyxiate my ancestry amidst this violence, amidst this despair. I can't deny the world my gift because of fear. You can't deny the world your gift because of fear. Living a life of purpose and service cannot and will not die with my gift still in here. Inspired by my pain and how close death came. Images of a tombstone inscribed with my name. Just then I snapped back to a new era, a new lane. And then my real I realized that I could be the one to make a change. Because see, I am an artist, creator of lyrical calligraphy. Take you on a journey with my soliloquies. Literary imageries full of healing. May my words add meaning to your life. And the thoughts you left behind with the things that I write. May my words penetrate your soul, levitate your being beyond the thoughts that you think you know. Because see, ignoring the call of our dreams can be lethal. If we ignore the call of our dreams, it can be lethal, especially when you tell your big dreams to small-minded people. Because see, pumping in the depths of me is my artistry, this life-giving gift that I was given. How can I deny the world the gift of the Creator's imprint? How dare I suppress the talents etched in the flesh of my chest? Am I not grateful? Do I not cherish it? Randall, have you not realized that this is a ticket to your exodus? See, when we are chasing our dreams, sometimes we'll ask if it's worth it. But have you not realized that by not doing it, you are causing the world a disservice, a failure to fulfill your purpose? Because see, I am an artist, persistently pushing pens and pencils, living in my purpose, practicing my pure potential. See, we artists, we have to get creating when the world is devastated. We as humans, we have to get creating when the world is devastated. We are the beacons of hope, healing to suicide notes. We change people's lives with our gifts. So no matter how rough it gets, don't quit. Know that you are an image of the infinite. Every choice that we make fulfills our life's pages. See, the road ahead is going to be tough, but remain patient. Know that you are designing magic in the making. So when the blueprint of your story is read, will it free others from the matrix? Thank you. That was my first piece called I'm an Artist. I hope it resonated with you. And there's one line in there I just wanted to share, which is to say that if we don't walk in our purpose, if we are not able to serve from a place of purpose, then we're literally taking away from how others can benefit by us being able to give, and not just giving. I guess I look at philanthropy as it is definitely monetary, but philanthropy is also something that we can give by putting smiles on people's faces and, walking in this earth with compassion and kindness. But I think about philanthropy in the sense of what is it that we're giving, regardless of whatever we have and what we're grateful for. So I hope that piece resonated with you, and please go out there and live your purpose and be the best version of yourself possible. This next poem I want to share speaks to a little bit about legacy. And for me, legacy has been really important. I think philanthropy is very connected to the concept of legacy because we want to ensure that with our time that we have here, that we can make the world that much better, that we can leave the world a little bit better than we came into. So this poem is called The Dash. Since the day I learned my first word, self-expression has always been second nature. I am a child prodigy of third world parents, so I have to tell my forefather stories on paper because I often question if a coffin is where my legacy is destined, a rigor mortis reflection of me, buried 6 feet deep in the six, my legacy, my soul, awaiting the arrival of 12 disciples and no remnants of me. No fruits of labor left from my seeds, not leaving this world better than when I came in. My name forgotten, not even whispered upon the lips of those my actions impacted. It's scary. I heard once that the worst thing that can happen to us when we are no longer here is not death itself. It is to be forgotten. And I cringe at the thought of my efforts lost in coffins, boxed in the same confines that caused me problems, my life, my beliefs, encrypted in tombstone, indicating the dates to and from. But I hope the dash in between represents more than just the good work I've done. My life blowing in the wind like the breath that has left my lungs, only to leave this world unfulfilled with holes in the potential that I was given. And respinning the same cycle to my children. See, when your time comes and your soul is sent, what will the dash on your tombstone represent? Thank you very much. Again, I want to repeat that last line because I think is really important. And ultimately, really, what it really represents is, when your time comes and your soul is sent, what will the dash on your tombstone represent? How will you be remembered for giving back? How will you be remembered for stewarding your purpose and being able to serve from that place? And I think it's really important to take the time to ask ourselves, how am I contributing? And when we think about the concept of Ubuntu, it really is because we are. Without me, without the community, I'm not me. Without those who supported me, mentored me, parented me, I would not be the person that I am today. And so this last piece that I want to share is called Flowers. And I wrote this piece to really celebrate those who, I guess it's a two-pronged poem. It's really to celebrate those who we've lost and who are no longer here, but also to recognize those that are still here with us, that we have an opportunity to celebrate them while they're here. And so I'd like to take this time to really give homage or pay homage to those who have allowed us to be here, who've paved the path and ensure that we can have this opportunity to do the work that we do. And I want to just take a moment to say, many of us have those friends and family members that maybe throughout the pandemic we lost touch with, or we weren't really able to touch base with as often as we'd like to. And I just want to encourage you to reach out and tell them how much they mean to you, how much they inspire you, how much they really hold a place in your heart. Because sometimes giving flowers isn't a physical thing. Giving flowers can be a verbal thing. It can be just calling someone and saying, I love you, and something as simple as that. So I really want to encourage all of us to take this time to spread love. The world needs more love, more than ever. And I think you have the propensity and the opportunity to do that. So this poem is called Flowers, and I hope it inspires you, to live a life of purpose, but also to really be able to understand what it means to give, not just from a monetary standpoint, but what it really means to give from a place of compassion and kindness and love and gratitude. So here's Flowers. One of the only things more difficult than death itself is to be forgotten, or perhaps to plant like a seeds and never see your roses blossom, to never unbox your gift before your coffin. We all deserve to be honored while we are still alive. To witness the budding gratitude of loved ones with open eyes, you deserve to be celebrated like you're already gone, to be given your flowers while they are still flourishing, while you can still smell the sweet scent of photosynthesis as your life branches out of the purpose you're rooted into and the fruits you've produced. So may I give you your flowers while they are still in bloom. A bouquet package delivered and handed to you in honor of the effervescent existence of your truth. May this be a reminder that your words and actions live on beyond being 6 feet and entombed. You are worthy of being handed yours while you are still alive, while you can still sniff the sweet fragrance blossom in time, a reminder of how you bloomed before you were called to tomb, from darkness to light, how you passed on the baton for the next generation to take flight, a relay race of time between the lines of from and to, the legacy of how you actualize into truth. You have the right to leave this earth knowing that your presence was appreciated, that it made a difference, that it meant something to someone while there's still air in your lungs? What would it look like to normalize honoring those who mean something to us before they transition, so that they never question our love while they are still living? It's easy to take our loved ones for granted when we are caught up in our day-to-days, but in the same breath, the next breath is never guaranteed to stay. So before the leaves fall off of their trees and they branch out and reach into the heavens, let them know that they are a blessing, that their mere essence was a gift. May death never be the reason you appreciate the fact they lived. Thank you so much for listening to my poetry. And I want to thank the Giving Black committee and organizers and everybody behind the scenes making this event happen and make it possible. This is a time like no other. You know, it's in such an important moment and such an important initiative to ensure that we are giving back to the communities that we serve. And I'm just really grateful to have had the opportunity to be a part of it. Pardon me, I'm a little congested today, but I'm really grateful that I had the opportunity just to share and you know, blessed with my poetry. Again, what are you giving back to others? What are you doing for others? Is something that I think we should continue to ask ourselves. Thank you again, and have an incredible rest of your event.
Wow, wow, wow. So powerful. Thank you, Randall. Such gratitude to you for sharing those words. You know, you capped it off with the quote that's really driving what we are here. You know, what is your purpose? What are you giving to others? The dash, you know, living in between the beginning and the end. What are you doing in that period? So just really, really impactful words. And of course, the flowers. I'm always about giving flowers to folks that are around you, but just that real reminder to that legacy that we are building today, those buds, those legacies, you know, seeding them and making sure that the folks who are seeding them know that they are doing great things, and we are in such gratitude. So very, very powerful words. Thank you so much, Randall. We're going to keep this going. And next, I'm going to invite Mide back to introduce the next section, where we are going to be talking about community investment as well as corporate giving.
Thank you, Leanne. And I just want to echo your praise of Randall. I personally just really deeply touched by his encouraging words. And I hope all of our listeners are too. And, you know, I personally commit really to think about my own legacies as I go forward as well. It's always good to have that reminder, right? So our first panel discussion is about to take place. It is focused on a research spotlight, which we are calling From Mind to Heart, conversation about diversity and corporate community investment. From Mind to Heart is also the theme of our gathering today. And I just want to share a little bit of background with you. Of course, I know everybody has access to their event program, so please do delve into the event program for more detail about our speakers on the panel. But I'll start off by saying that AgentsC is completing a research project in partnership with Imagine Canada and the RBC Foundation. And our research focuses on perspectives about corporate community investment through practitioners who are based in Canada. And we ask them how principles of justice, access, inclusion, diversity, and equity intersects with the work of corporate community investment professionals. Our aim is to understand really the gap between practices and the ideals for the profession itself. So that research is currently underway and will likely be published in the fall. So please listen out for some announcements from us, from Imagine Canada, and also from RBC Foundation in relation to that over the next course of weeks and months. But to give you a little bit of a teaser or even an insight, just want to share with you some aspects of our research which I think are contextual to the conversation we're about to have. one of the first things we discovered was that there was a lack of Black and Indigenous representation in CSR or corporate community investment as a whole across Canadian corporations. And that lack of representation was particularly emphasized in leadership roles. It was interesting to see that 75% of those who participated in our research were women. And so I think that poses still some questions for us around the role of women in corporations and what may be viewed as women's work. And so we really kind of want to take a deeper look at that, because I think there are so many questions that we can ask as to why some of the more caring aspects of corporate responsibility are roles that women occupy and so few men are engaged in. The third thing was really looking at the sentiment behind justice, access, inclusion, diversity, and equity, and understanding that corporations are investing a lot of money in training and coaching in this area. But what we found really below that sentiment was that there was not much really to report in terms of how that coaching and training had translated into meaningful practice in such a way that Black and Indigenous people were being brought around the table to be involved and have choice, voice, and control in decisions around how corporations invest their money in communities. We also interviewed some young CSR students at McGill and Queen's University, because we wanted to know what young people thought about corporate community investment and CSR more generally. And so our research also contains some results there. Mostly it shares the stories of Black and Indigenous participants and provides associated recommendations with ultimate objectives on how to improve approaches and positively impact society. And we look forward, as I said, to sharing more on that in the fall. But today, we'd like to engage our panel of Black community investment experts in some of the key questions that have evolved from our research. And we want to engage everyone here today by giving them an opportunity to share feedback on how corporate investment should impact Black communities globally. So I'm pleased that joining us in this conversation are Mark Beckles, Vice President of Social Impact and Innovation at RBC, and he is leading the corporate citizenship team. We have Nazra Ayub, a young sister from my homeland, the UK, and Nazra is a Programs and Partnerships Associate for the Global Fund for Children. And we have Jason Teeters, who's Nurturing Lead at Collaboratory, and Jason and I have an ingoing joke that he is actually also my newest friend. And we have Simosile Umbejelwa, Regional Leader of Transformation, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at Baker Hughes for the Baker Hughes Sub-Saharan Africa section. And Simosile is joining us from South Africa. So, Jason, Mark, Nazra, Simosile, welcome. You each represent different parts of the globe in your respective field, and I am delighted to see you all and to have your participation in today's discussion. I want to kick off. Let's get straight to the questions. I want to kick off, and a question for you, Jason. And you probably have the toughest question, brother. So I'm gonna share it with you. And I'm really looking forward to hearing more about you and your work at the Collaboratory. But can you speak to us about, when we think about Edgar Villanova's book, Decolonizing Wealth, what does the decolonization of wealth mean to you?
First of all, I really appreciate being here. Thank you so much for this opportunity, and especially giving me such a easy question to kick off. So when I was thinking about this question around the decolonization, one of the things that in the work that I'm doing that becomes really clear is that the hope here is to provide an answer that lends to even more open conversation around this. But when I think about decolonization, the word itself is really not describing what it is, but it's describing what it is not. And so in the definition of trying to classify decolonization is typically seen as an undoing, right? A independence. And one of the things that I've seen in my work over the last 5 years of ecosystem building, predominantly in overlooked and undervalued entrepreneurs across the globe, we typically see that we need an interdependence, right? We have to see the value of every single individual as important if we're trying to create an environment that works well. And so, for example, oftentimes, right, when we think about this decolonization, we still typically use the same measurement sticks to be able to provide access and opportunity to Black communities. And so, for example, in my experience, when a very successful Black organization has been given an opportunity to invest in their community, they are still struggling with, I want to make sure that I get a next round of funding. I want to make sure that I show value. And so oftentimes we still use a very typical and traditional way of explaining impact, which then just separates us and even colonizes us to some aspect in the work that we're doing. And so for me, when I think about this, I like to think about it from a holistic point of view, especially when you talk about jade, right? Jade is like a soup of all these things need to be in there for it to actually work properly. And so for us, and for me in my experience, it's really about redefining wealth, right? Oftentimes, wealth has been associated with the financial aspects, and that's how we get to the balance and the success that we're looking for. But oftentimes we overlook sort of this knowing of social capital, relationships, connections, and those relationships and connections are what last long after the funding goes away. And so oftentimes we create the space, but we don't give the opportunity to have support around that, or we're needing to manufacture that support. So relational wealth, connectivity, connection, collaboration really starts to play a role in how we rethink opportunity, at least for here in Southwest Florida, for our Indigenous, Black, LGBTQAI, Latinos, Latinas, all those communities, is how do we build an ecosystem of connection that allows them to be represented in a way that is most valuable to them. And so that's sort of how I would kick off this, my take and my humble opinion of the decolonization of wealth.
Wow, I love that, Jason. I love the concept of building these new collaborative systems. And clearly at the center of that, I imagine, is more of a trust-based approach that then kind of, if you like, tones down the volume a little bit on some of these more classic and traditional philanthropic, community investment philanthropic programs that are more kind of intensely focused on things like metrics and results. And we all know, as fundraisers, these kind of complex funding applications and loop and the kind of like, the mental assault course that is required to complete these. So just a sidebar question for you then. How are you in the practice making things easier within the ecosystem for there to be collaboration between the collaboratory and folks on the ground in the community?
Yeah, I think the two things that I would say, one is this idea of moving at the speed of trust. Right, oftentimes programs or projects have end dates to them, which leaves voids if you're not there consistently, which is something that's similar to a lot of our communities. They see a bunch of people wrap their arms around them because of the cause or because of a way, and then afterwards they're gone. And so for us, it's moving at the speed of trust. And then the second part, which you really spoke to, there's this how we design things, right? As a educator and a designer, it was typically I had all the knowledge, and so therefore I knew exactly what needed to be done in the space. And when you think of this design for, what we typically start to move is down the line from design for to with to buy, right? The individuals that are at the center of the challenges and at the center of the solutions are the ones that need to be designing the metrics, the barriers, and the key performance indicators. And as a corporate organization, as a foundation, our role is really to support in removing those barriers that are right there in front of them, and not designing something that we believe or that corporations believe is what is needed, but really starting with the power of being the individuals at the center of the challenge, being the ones that design the solutions and the metrics for getting out of that.
Wow. Thank you, brother. Appreciate you for sharing. This really resonates with me. Design, moving from design for to design with to design by. I hope we can come and revisit that, but I want to move to my sister in England, Nazra Ayu. Not only is she my sister in England, but she's also a young person doing phenomenal things in the world of community investment. So welcome, Nazra. You and I have had a few conversations. So my mind is popping now in terms of really how I can draw you into this conversation, particularly because of what some of Jason shared. But I'm going to stick to the script. I know this would be the most helpful thing for me to do right now. So Nazra, why do you believe there is less support around B3 organizations? That's Black-led, Black-focused, and Black supported organizations. Why do you think there's less support for them? And how does the younger generation embrace philanthropy?
Yeah, first of all, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here and kind of hear from everyone. It's been really interesting so far. So I think in order to answer that question in the UK context, I think it's really important for me to kind of take us back a little bit, a couple years, when unfortunately the murder of George Floyd happened. And then there was a massive wave of Black Lives Matter protests. And there was a lot of interest from corporate organizations, especially in the UK, and even just private philanthropic organizations that wanted to give money to Black-led organizations and also other minority ethnic organizations across the UK. And kind of having that underpinned by the pandemic further highlighted how important it was to kind of invest in these communities, because so many Black-led and Black-owned organizations were shutting down because they didn't have the funding no longer and there was not that much support. So when this opportunity came about, we kind of saw an exciting energy where, people were finally starting to listen. And it was this kind of energy where it was bittersweet, because some of us have been out here trying to kind of put racism on that for many, many years, even beyond my time, of course, where people have been talking about racism and police brutality and how much investment is necessary for Black communities within the UK and across the world. And no one was listening. And suddenly everybody was apparently listening. So there was a pot of funding that was kind of put out there for Black-led and other minority ethnic organizations, where, it was said that we can decide where does this money go, who's it given it to, and what kind of priorities we want to enlist. And one of the biggest things that we said was as Black people and as Black individuals and professionals that were in this sector were saying that, you know, a lot of these applications, a lot of these kind of metrics that are used to decide who gets funding is very exhausting, is very kind of like catch you out, is very untrustworthy. When, you know, a lot of people are applying, and that leads to a lot of organizations not getting funding, not because the work that they're doing is not valid, but because these application processes are tedious. The way that it's done is in a way where it's trying to kind of weeds out a lot of people and a lot of organizations because the funding is so small. So now the reason why I kind of put this in place is that after these last couple of years, a lot of funding has been kind of put out to Black-led communities. And what was promised was that this wasn't going to be a kind of a tokenistic, we're going to give a bit of funding and then we're out kind of situation. It was, you know, let's work together. We have the money, we have the resources as private organizations, as government organizations, and you guys need the money and you guys are the ones that are doing the work. So we're going to kind of work together. However, since that was the case, the energy has shifted, and it's kind of resulted in disappointment, withdrawal of funding, and a lot of risk assessments. And risk assessments is a very important one, because I think this is why a lot of Black-led organizations are not being invested in anymore as much as they were, let's say, when there was a height of things happening 2 years ago. And this is whole idea that a lot of Black-led organizations are risky, or we're going to kind of do a risk assessment to assess how safe is it for us to invest in you? How safe is it for us to give you this amount of funding, and can you handle it? Now, we all know that the case is that a lot of Black-led organizations can handle it, you know? And what does philanthropy mean? It doesn't just mean to give money. It actually means to support organizations going through that process of infrastructure building, going through that process of having funding, and going through that process of longevity and long-term investment. But sometimes, and a lot of the times, kind of this risk assessment is used to justify why we're not going to give you funding, why we're going to delay funding. And a lot of the times, who does this happen to? Black-led organizations. And I think a lot of this is underpinned by racism, is underpinned by the lack of trust, to trust communities to do the work that they set out to do, even though it's been happening for years. And I think that's the biggest thing, is that at the end of the day, when it comes to why I think Black-led organizations are not being invested by, and why that there's a hesitancy, it comes down to racism. Because if we look at the evidence of how who's doing the work, it's Black people, it's Black young people, Black old people, everybody, and it's been happening for years. So the evidence is there that we can do the work, that we're making change. We're just not being invested in because they don't want to, and there's no kind of benefit for them, let's say marketing wise or kind of outwardly. And I think that's why it's so important for us to keep them under pressure and keep them under duress to give and open their purses up and give us the money. And lastly, quickly, just on the point of kind of young people and traditional philanthropy, I think this ties in really well, because I think what we found, especially with a lot of young people are more likely to be flexible, creative, and open-minded when it comes to adapting the design, the combination of funding. And I think this sometimes you don't find that with traditional philanthropy, because again, they're trying to be a bit more safe. Where's the money going? We need to check. We need to kind of assess everybody and assess that the money's going in the right places. Whereas I think with young people, they're more likely to kind of be free with it. They're more likely to kind of understand that, you know, they're on the front lines. They are on the ground. They're working in grassroots organizations. They're out here, you know, protesting the streets, and they understand how these things work. And I think with them, they have a bit more trust when it comes to designing what that criteria looks like. So we had a kind of a program called the Spark Fund, where we had young people from across the world design in their regions a fund where they design it, where they allocate the funding, and they also kind of decide who gets the funding. And what we found with that is, again, that they were more likely to be have background knowledge on their communities. So, for example, if they saw certain organizations come in, they had the background check on them already because they worked with them, not because they've been spying on them or because they don't trust them, but because they actually understood that, you know, these communities and these kind of organizations, I know about them because I have worked with them. And they also understand what kind of priorities are needed in their region. So, for example, within Southern Africa, one of the massive things was employment and education, whereas in Asia, it was climate change. And if we look at kind of what's happening in these countries, we can understand why that these are pressing issues for young people. But who's more likely to know? Is it us, who are kind of a bit more far removed, or is it young people who actually are working in those communities? So I think that's why when I talk about kind of, I think, traditional philanthropy, I think sometimes there is a lack of kind of relationship to the communities that it aims to serve compared to, let's say, young people who are working in those communities. And I think that's why it's so necessary to shift the power away from traditional philanthropy and those that are making decisions at the top, and give it to young people and allow them to make those decisions. I'll leave it there.
Rarely am I ever speechless, but I am now. You, sis, you've dropped the mic. I think, you know, just to be really clear, when we interviewed for our research young people, I would say that they were the folks who had the most radical ideas about how they wanted community investment to operate and how it could change. And your work at the Global Fund for Children through the Spark Fund, I think is tapping into such an important area. And I want to draw parallels between our brother Jason, who talks about trust, and you also, who talks about trust. And right there in the middle is this thing that you have called out from the very beginning of racism becomes a barrier to trusting B3 organizations, right? Thank you. I'm hoping we're going to expand some more, but before that, I want to call on Mr. Mark Beckles. Now, one thing everyone should know about Mark was that I first came to Canada in 2008. So 14 or so years ago. And Mark, without wanting to age us, you were one of the very first friends I ever made. So I got Jason, my newest friend, and you, my oldest friend. And I don't mean that in a pejorative sense whatsoever. So, so Brother Mark, you are, I hope you don't mind me describing you this way, but you are, in the Canadian context, quite the unicorn. You're a Black man in an executive position in arguably Canada's largest bank. And you have the responsibility, along with others, of course, for corporate community investment. So I want to draw you into this conversation. Mark, what does it mean to be a socially responsible leader within such a huge organization like RBC? What qualities, actions, traits are associated with leadership in your role?
Wow. Look, Mide, let me first start by saying thank you for inviting me to participate in this conversation. It is timely. It is great to see you. It is also great to make new friends in Jason and in Nasra and in Simosile, and I'm hoping that we can continue this conversation long after today. The question that you are asking is an important one. It is a complex one. It is one that actually links from what Jason was saying earlier to what Nasra was saying, and the role that I get to play in helping to shape RBC's corporate social responsibility approach to addressing community related issues. Jason talked about moving from 4 to buy, and in many respects that underpins the way in which we have taken to the work that we are doing. Nasra talked about the fact that there too often is this lack of trust in the community and community organizations, and a particular prejudice against youth in particular, where we discount the ability of young people to help us solve real pressing social issues. But if I were to then think about this in a larger context, to begin to sort of help us understand fundamentally where some of the challenges come, the reality is that many corporate organizations who invest in community and millions, tens of millions of dollars in community on an annual basis, notwithstanding that all comes from a place of good intention, the overall challenge is that most of the people, and this is an observation and less of a criticism, but an important observation nonetheless, is that most of the individuals and structures that build CSR strategies to support vulnerable communities, most of those teams and individuals are not led by people who have lived experiences or who can even relate to the causes that them and their organizations are trying to solve. It is like, going to a GP when you need orthopedic surgery. You need an orthopedic surgeon to address a back issue. So my point here is that there is and remains a real opportunity as we innovate in the area of corporate social responsibility and sustainability more broadly, to really challenge ourselves around who is at the table. How are we ensuring that our strategies are legitimate, that they are responsive, that they are built by and not for? Because the by also links back to Jason's point around colonialization. It is a colonial approach to say, they don't know how to do this for themselves, we will do it for them. So I fast forward to my role, and you asked the question around attributes. One of the things that I think is important in the kind of role that I am privileged to be in is that of being able to understand what the organization is trying to and wants to accomplish, and marrying that with what the community needs are. And having that sense of, I would say, humility and empathy, and the ability to be able to translate the interest of the corporation and the language of the corporation, and translate the language of the community, and to make sure that we begin to marry our intentions up in a way that ensures that the intended social outcomes are outcomes that are meaningful to all parties, and that we have also the ability to convene, such as we are doing today, and having the tough conversations around what else needs to be done, and how do we continue to evolve and disrupt our CSR approaches to make sure that they are always relevant to the communities that we are serving. In the context of the programs that we lead, we try to anchor what we do in two key principles. One is the notion of equitable access. When we look at the allocation of our funding and the beneficiaries of programs that we fund, are we satisfied that it is anchored in the principle of equitable access? Are we ensuring that the most vulnerable individuals and vulnerable communities are actually the majority beneficiaries of our approach to community impact? And then secondly, inclusive prosperity. At the end of the day, if the most vulnerable communities aren't doing well, then society isn't doing well. Said differently, when vulnerable communities do well, when there is social inclusion, entire communities do well. But I will offer for consideration that also part of the challenge rests in some of the language that we use. And Nazra hit on an important point around this whole notion of racism, and the role that racism plays in how community investment gets made. And by language, I mean that we sometimes fall into this pattern of academizing issues. We talk a lot about systemic racism, for example. And one of the things that I have been, pretty vocal about is that when we talk about racism as systemic, sometimes even in those conversations, it allows or gives permission for people or individuals to exempt themselves from self-examination and how acts of commission or omission are contributing to this notion of systemic racism. And, to make the point, therefore, that systemic racism does not exist without actual racism, and that actual racism doesn't exist without racists. And so therefore, there needs to be that constant self-reflection on how those who are in positions of influence, those who can actually make a change, those who can inform strategy and partnerships and so on, have to stop, and us included here, stop and think about how are we contributing to or enabling a system, the effects of which continue to be harmful, continue to exclude, continue to potentially reinforce structures of colonialization, even as we try to unwind them. How do we give voice and effect to what young people are saying, whether about the things it is that they need to be successful, to be able to access a job, to be prepared with 21st century skills? How do we listen to youth and their concerns around climate? How do we ensure that we don't discount? And we do all of that, therefore, by ensuring that we adopt principles that are anchored in inclusive prosperity and equitable access. If we can get to that place, and we can get to a place where we are listening and we are encouraging the buy piece, and I love the way Jason framed that, we can actually get to sustainable solutions that actually transform entire communities.
Yes. Yeah. Wow, Mark, thank you. Thank you so much. I think there is a lot to unpack in what you have shared. And truly, I am glad that you have shared the complexity of your work. One of the things that I will say, just to acknowledge, what you're saying is, it reminds me of a quote from Ta-Nehisi Coates, who says, listen, the problem with racism is that those who perpetuate it refuse to own the fact that they are perpetrators of racism. And so we then can't have a conversation if everybody is saying, well, no racism to report here. Nope, that wasn't a race. And what I said was not race. He's not racist. So where then does racism sit if it doesn't sit anywhere, but we as black people are constantly experiencing it? So anyway, I'll park the bus there. But one of the things that I've taken away is this thing about equitable access. And I want to bring in my brother Sibosile from South Africa here. And so Sibosile, you're in a similar position, I think, to Mark, in that you're working for a very large corporation in South Africa, a US-based corporation, actually, in South Africa. Question for you. Let me rephrase it. We found that 75% of practitioners in the corporate community investment field, certainly those who partook in our survey, were women. Why do you think this is the case? And is this the case in South Africa?
I want to thank everybody for the opportunity to be also on the platform, and it's really an honor and to share just some of our lived experiences and what we understand to be corporate, social investment. And I think the panel in its entirety have really summed up some of the key challenges that not only South Africa faces, but the whole entire sub-Saharan Africa faces, which is the systemic exclusion within the system. And if you think about where does exclusion really begins, it starts from the gatekeeping of who comes into the organization, who has that seat at the table, and who actually makes the decision and pulls the purse strings. So I kind of want to agree with the. In fact, I don't want to kind of agree with it. I completely agree with the research to say that 75% are actually female. But I want to go further and to say 75% of those females are probably white. And so that is why you find this disconnect between the initiatives that we're driving as organizations against what is actually needed by the Black community and society as large. And I'm going to talk from a context of, for example, within sub-Saharan Africa, majority of us, unfortunately, we're not the minority, we're actually the majority. And yet you're still going to find that the solutions that are being, drilled down or pushed down our throats, it's very Eurocentric or Americentric. And that is because of the colonial mindset that I think, Jason has alluded to in some of his earlier points. So therefore, I think critical to making sure that we understand the concept of why people are not actually, or why females are more the ones that are drawn to these careers. It's simply because us as males, for example, are not taking the baton and actually being champions around issues of social inclusion, transformation, making sure that people are developed and that we share resources. We want to be the CEOs, the CFOs, the head of operations, because that is where we know the power wants to be. And if you think about it even further, where have women been prehistorically defined? The ones that go to beg, the ones that have to continuously ask. And so therefore, that is why you will find that a lot of the practitioners are females, because they're the ones that have to go to the CEO, the CFO, and ask for money. And that is where we will, kind of confine females to. But in most cases, as I said, and those white females that are the decision makers now in CSR are actually not even, in tune with the realities of our various countries, or the issues that we as Black individuals face within the various countries. And in South Africa, quite interestingly enough, because of the big laws that we have around transformation, social inclusion, etc., you tend to find that now you will actually have people of power that might be Black, and placed in those positions, but you will always have some kind of a conduit or a grant management company that has some funny or white person that's there making the decisions or pulling the purse strings once again to make sure that I think earlier point that was raised by Nazra, that the system gets maintained or the system gets driven, which is let's bog them down with admin, let's bog them down with audits and requirements and documents and all that kind of stuff. So it's really for us, and I think, and I'll speak to the sub-Saharan African context, it's really linked, to the deliberate exclusion of people in decision-making, positions. But beyond that, we as males have not taken, the debate and to kind of stand up for females and to actually champion some of these issues. And further to that, we are more attracted to the sexy careers that we really want, that we know are powerful, that we know, will continue to entrench the heteronormity that we actually see from males within organizations. And I think beyond that, we as practitioners have also a duty to kind of encourage at a very young age or at an early stage, and educate people what it is that we actually do and how does it impact organizations as a whole, and how or what are the requirements? Because sometimes, people get a head start, and I speak to white young kids who get exposed to, multitude of careers because they have an auntie or an uncle or a brother or a sister who's been there and who can support them and take them, to career days or career fairs, and can actually role model what needs to be done. Whereas us, as I think, not only more so as males, but again, Black males, we don't have those kind of role models. We see very few of those leaders that have actually, steadfastly stood, for these kind of careers that we see being forgotten by males, and being driven or taken up by females.
Yeah. Well, Simusile, thank you so much for sharing that. I think clearly gender discrimination is also part and parcel of the story that we're trying to share here. And I thank you so much just for shedding a spotlight there. We have about 5 more minutes, folks, and I want to thank Mark, Nazra, you, Simo, Celia as well. But before I let you go, just a question from our audience, and I believe it's from Carmen. And Carmen asks, and if you wouldn't mind just answering, each of you giving your answer to this question as quickly as you can, what's the next right thing we can do to disrupt existing colonial metrics and measures that those holding the purse strings need in their storytelling to prove solutions are working? So in other words, how do nonprofit organizations kind of combat or even leap over or get over this kind of compelling need to really, I guess, go through the hoops to acquire funding?
Maybe I'll jump in really quickly.
Yeah.
I think it, in many respects, links back to what Jason said around building programs by rather than for. Once there's mutual agreement on, the why piece. In other words, where the community or the beneficiaries determine what success and what impact looks like from their perspective, and has the support of the funder, that is where you begin to deconstruct the bias that says, as the funder, I determine what success looks like versus the community informing what that success piece looks like. A lot of times the metrics come from corporations who have to explain why they're diverting profit to community away from shareholders. And oftentimes the only way to do that is to use metrics that give a shareholder confidence that that money is being used well. That is no excuse, though, for ignoring the voice of the beneficiary and those community organizations that are able to then to articulate to say, here's what you think success needs to look like, here's what we know success should and could look like. We need you to come over here versus taking us over there.
Is having that conversation. But also I want to acknowledge, Mark, the tremendous power imbalance. I as a fundraiser myself, for many years, I've known there to be this power imbalance between me representing an organization that needs funds and speaking to an organization that has those funds and a very complex process to access them. So thank you. And Nazra, I want to quickly ask you, how do B3 organizations overcome those hurdles?
Yeah, I think it goes to I think being vocal. I think first of all, we need to be radical and we need to be vocal in these kind of spaces. And I think it's having allies that are able to kind of speak for us when we are unable to speak, or advocate for us when we're unable to advocate. I think that's so important, because I think there's a lot of kind of players within the system that are kind of, they say that they're for Black communities or Black-led organizations. Actually they're not, or they want you to be palatable to white audiences or to the white kind of organizations that do have the funds. So I think it's so important to kind of be radical in how you move. it's, although very risky, I completely understand that. I think that's why sometimes when I kind of look at some organizations where, you know, they have young people involved in them, they're more likely to be radical, because I think, you know, we find that with a lot of, due to like immediate gratification, due to kind of wanting things done straight away, I think a lot of young people are more likely to cut the bullshit, excuse my language, and kind of just be straight up with it when they're in the room, kind of thing. Instead of being like, let's all sit at the table, they're like, let's throw the table away and come up with something new, come up with something innovative. So I think that's why it's so important to, I think, firstly engage with these groups and energies that are going to allow you to dismantle these barriers whilst doing it in an authentic way, rather than being palatable to these players and these powers that are going to kind of keep shaping you into a place. And when you step out of that place, they're going to be like, our money's going with it. So I think that's why it's important to kind of, I think, keep being radical to the energy and the level that you can.
Thank you, Nazra. And I hear you echo Mark's point as well. Like, you know, that conversation needs to be had. Absolutely. Simosile, I've got to limit you, and I hope you don't mind, brother, to 2 sentences. How do you challenge the system of grant applications that seem to be weighted against B3 organizations? What should B3 organizations be doing?
I definitely think, to Nazra's point, align yourself with people that can be supportive, but be clear around what's your intent going to be and don't compromise on it. I think I'd rather have funds that I'm going to consciously be able to know and sleep at night that I've used it for the intent that it was intended for, than to get funds. But I guess really we need to continue being radical and being clear around what is our intent, because that is where sometimes, you know, there's a disconnect.
Yeah. Continue to be radical and do it with intention. Thank you, Simosile. Last but not least, Mr. Titas, you were further down the road, I would say, in terms of really thinking about how to put a stick of dynamite in some traditional practices. How should B3 organizations approach, let's say, the dismantling of some of the barriers to funding?
So in a very limited time, I think it would be really interesting to think about the way corporate organizations started implementing practices within their work around ping pong tables and couches and TVs, right? When that first started, we believed that was, for a corporate organization to do that, was ridiculous. And then what happened? Every organization after that realized if we want to be successful, we need to give this to our people. And so in that sort of same sense, right, we need corporate organizations to see that there is true economic value in having diverse thought and diverse people at the table. So you're not backtracking when a bad Twitter comes out from your CEO because they just didn't think, or they didn't have someone they could reach out to say, no, that has a different perspective before you tweet that. And so seeing the value in having every single individual in the room to be able to provide answers and questions to topics.
Wow, gosh, I wish we could continue this conversation, folks. I so do. And I also want to acknowledge Sarah, who posted a very important point that really is about, you know, us as Black people. When we get into these positions where we ourselves are decision makers and brokers around where funding goes, really, I guess the essence of your message, Sarah, is for us to be compassionate and caring for our B3 organizations, rather than kind of reflect and adopt the cultures of the organizations within which we are operating. So I know everybody on this call, Mark, Nazra, Simosile, Jason Titas, you all are doing tremendous work representing Black people in your various locations, in your various roles. You are opening the doors to B3 organizations to access funding that was once restricted to them. I wish you every success in your continued journey, and I look forward to keeping in touch with you. Thanks for this great and informative conversation. See and speak to you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, it is 10:19. I'm going to suggest that we take a bit of a breather. I don't know about you guys, but listen, I am just so deeply excited, so encouraged by what we have heard and shared so far. So I'd suggest let's take 10 minutes as a bit of a break and come back at 10:30. Hope that works for everyone. Here's our interlude. Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back. So I want to first of all thank everyone who's put comments and questions in the chat. One of the things we're going to do is try and revisit your comments and questions as we evolve into our after party, as it were, at 12:30. So if something you have written hasn't yet been acknowledged, or if you have a question, we'll try and do that towards the end of the conference when we ask you to join us at the after party, which will be a great time, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. Okay, so our corporate community investment panel discussion was hugely important, and I think was a conversation that was long overdue. And I thank our panelists for their wisdom and insight. We're going to switch a little bit now. Not much is known about the fact that Black people have been present in Canada since the European conquest. The colonizers came with Black slaves to colonize this land. And during the period of chattel slavery, our presence has been ingrained in the Americas and the Caribbean. As Black people, some of us are indigenous, some multi-generational, some first generation, and some, like me, are immigrants, new and recent. And today, we honor both the indigenous and multi-generational Africans in Canada by spotlighting the rich and powerful, unjust, resilient, hopeful history of Africville, which I had the pleasure of visiting as part of the National Black Canadian Summit hosted by the Michael Jean Foundation in Halifax, Nova Scotia. My family and I spent some time in Africville, and that was probably about 2 weeks ago. And to be honest, I still have not fully processed the gravity and the weight of what we saw and what we felt. I want to transition to Bernice Arsenault, co-founding director of Africville Genealogy Society, Percy Paris, chair of Africville Genealogy Society, Juanita Peters, director of the Africville Heritage Museum, and Beatrice J. Wilkins, co-founding director of the Africville Genealogy Society. I do so and welcome you with the highest respect and the ultimate deference to you for your tremendous resilience and the graceful way that you represent your challenging and difficult history and past, but also the way that you represent and shed a spotlight on a very powerful and positive future. Welcome, welcome. Thank you for joining us. I'm going to get really emotional in this conversation, so I ask you to be with me, having spent time in your community, what is left of it at least. It struck me deeply. It made me think about so many communities across the Americas, Black communities, where we have had a presence that have been devastated because our presence is. And so I'm honored, deeply privileged. Thank you. As we engage in our conversation, Percy, Uncle Percy, I will say, because in the African tradition, actually this is an interesting point, in the African tradition, we don't call our elders by their first name. So
Right.
I welcome you, Uncle Percy, Auntie Beatrice, Auntie Bernice, and Auntie Juanita, although I suspect it's Sister Juanita. And it is in the spirit of the African tradition that I say welcome and thank you for joining us. And my first question is to you, Uncle Percy. Just building a bridge between our corporate community investment panel and you and your tremendous work throughout your lifetime and now in the Africville Heritage Society. How has the corporate world responded to the compelling case to preserve and tell the story of Africville? Where have you seen an interest in justice, access, inclusion, diversity, and equity through corporate funding?
An excellent question. Before I respond to the question, I just want to stress that I'm the chair of the Africville Heritage Trust, and not with respect to the Genealogy Society. Your question is a good one, and I would say from the get that we have not, the Africville Heritage Trust, we have not yet embarked on that full-scale fundraising campaign strictly targeted at the corporate community in Nova Scotia. Having said that, the corporate response has been somewhat modest, but with all due respect to the corporate community, generally speaking here in Nova Scotia, is the corporate community, generally speaking, waits to be approached. We will be embarking on a huge fundraising campaign within the next 12 months. We have gotten some immediate response, even without asking, from the corporate community here in Nova Scotia on some of the projects that we have initiated. And the corporate community has to some degree jumped on board and helped out in ways that are most welcome from the Heritage Trust perspective. We've also have had some corporate sponsorship internationally outside of Canada. Businesses have made significant financial donations to the Africville Heritage Trust. We will be ramping up, hopefully within the next 12 months, a huge campaign which will be multifaceted. It will not only be directed at the general public, but there will be a corporate prong to that campaign. And we already know, at least I know, that there has been some individuals that have some significant wealth that have already approached me and are waiting in line to sign up to make a donation to the Africville Heritage Trust. So when we do this, and I've mentioned that within the next 12 months, we've been working at this for a while now, and we just want to make sure we do it right and that we have the right partners in place to assist us in achieving our goals.
Thank you. And I emphasize and acknowledge really that you were just at the beginning of your journey to involve and engage corporations. I certainly do wish you well. Very pleased to hear that you have in the pipeline plans for a major fundraising campaign. I know we have many Black fundraisers on this call today, so my Black brothers and sisters of the fundraising world, get ready. Here's our call to action to support the Africville community and their fundraising efforts. So, Sister Juanita, please give us a little bit of background on Africville.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you all, when I was growing up, I thought everybody knew the Africville story because we certainly knew it. And only because my grandparents were watching it on TV as the community was being dismantled. But much of Canada, US, and the rest of the world don't really know the Africville story, who we are, where we come from. We are you, all of you who are probably on this call today. We're all very much related, and I'll tell you how. We are a unique part of Canadian history. It was a cultural enclave here in Nova Scotia, a small village established by escaped American slaves, and then right here in the Halifax area. So these were mostly people who had fought for the British during the War of 1812 and the American Revolution and had been given freedom on British territory here in Nova Scotia and brought to a land under various promises, freedom, land, provisions, which of course did not quite happen the way that people expected. And I must take you back and just let you know that Blacks in Nova Scotia have been here since the 1600s. And so a very long time. The roots of Africville began with the settling of more than 2,000 African diasporic freedom fighters who escaped slavery in the United States and fought in those two wars. It was founded by these freedom fighters who were seeking a better quality of life and more opportunity towards self-sufficiency and fun. You know, crazy enough, we're still talking about that today. In general, there are many who do not know also what befell the community of Africville. So there were many communities that were developed in Nova Scotia from those migrations, and Africville is one of them. And just to put things in perspective, when you came to this British colony called Nova Scotia, you were told exactly where you could go. You couldn't just purchase land anywhere. Blacks were limited to the lands that were hard to farm, that were hard to manage, that were not close to resources, and eventually put in places where unfavorable things were also put. In the 1960s, the city of Halifax started a campaign to remove the people of Africville from Africville under the banner of urban renewal. But that was a very easy conversation to have with public, because over time, the city had surrounded the community of Africville with so many undesirable things. You know, there was an abattoir, an infectious disease hospital, the prison, the open dump. It goes on and on. Like anything you did not want in your community is exactly what the city put around Africville, and then labeled it an undesirable place to live. One of the things that I think is really important to understand is over the entire history of Africville, we now know that word environmental racism and what that means and what that looks like. We can match this in many places across the world, but certainly at that time, people who lived in Africville were not familiar with it. And so they really didn't have the resources to fight this. I want to mention that in 1917, the Halifax explosion hit the city of Halifax. And that Halifax explosion happened right here off the Bedford Basin, where the village of Africville resides, the people reside. And even though they were at the forefront of this, and the community was battered and bruised, it recovered. It recovered because of who the people were. I also want to mention that there was a relief fund that was created for the people who were affected by the Halifax explosion, but the people of Africville did not receive any of that relief fund. As I said, what they did receive were all things that nobody would want. Despite, all the things that were happening to Africville, a lot of great things did come out of Africville. I want to mention George Dixon, the first Black athlete to win a world championship in any sport. He also created shadow boxing. For those of you who are familiar with boxing, that technique or term was created by George Dixon, and he was born here in Africville. If you're familiar with the contralto, world-renowned contralto singer Portia White, she taught here in Africville and was from Halifax area. And entertainers like Sidney Poitier, Miles Davis, and many others, when they would travel to Canada, specifically to Halifax, they would say, where are the Black people? They wanted to go to places where they felt comfortable, and they felt that in Africville. In fact, Duke Ellington wrote a song about an Africville woman, which he never got to complete, Clara, but he also spent a lot of time in Africville. But it's not only the high-profile individuals that made Africville what it was the people themselves who knew that their survival depended on each other and created a community that was self-sustainable and self-supportive. If they wanted food, they got it out of the water, lobster, clams, you name it. Their livelihood, their fun was on the water, swimming and rafting. And you're looking at a picture right now, I think, that has two young fellows on bicycles. Those train tracks are another one of the adversities that were thrown in Africville. So the community already exists, and the train builds their tracks right through the community. So some of these folks, you might see the power pole there, can walk right out of their backyards, and the train track is 3 steps away or less. Very dangerous. So over the first half of the 20th century, Halifax city officials, local and federal law enforcement, and public health, with chilling efficiency, engineered the decimation of Africville. With media bias and manipulation, denial of rights, deception, coercion, and dehumanization, the settlement led out, and the community was no more by the time 1969, 1970. In fact, the last man to leave Africville was Pa Aaron Carvery, and he said if he had been a little younger, he would have fought even more. Pa Carvery owned a store, had just built another store, which he didn't get to open. He owned a lot of land, so people rented from him. It was a community where, people took care of each other, and Beatrice and Bernice will speak to that a little later. But the attempt for society to redefine this community didn't work because over the years, we're sitting at over 50 years since the community was dissolved. And yet, these particular individuals, we're looking at children of Africville who are adults today, have continued to find a way to tell their story and to tell what was really important about Africville and its people and how they did survive regardless of all the things that were put in front of them. We're talking, the most prevalent example of people making lemonade out of lemons and depending on each other and surviving. In 2010, the city of Halifax delivered an apology to the people of Africville, the former residents who are still alive and their descendants. And that apology was not just for the destruction of the community, but for also the way the people of Africville were treated in their long history here on this land. And so as part of our role at the Africville Museum, we continue to tell those stories, but we continue to really look for, what's most important about these stories and the people. What are our takeaways? What do we want people to know about the history of Africville and its people and our history as Nova Scotians in general? Again, like I say, we are you, all of you who traveled across the border into Canada looking for that better life.
Wow. What a story. What a story, Sister Juanita. Thank you.
You're welcome.
There is a tremendous background that you have given to us, and your opening points that we should not take for granted that everybody knew the story of Africville, and I've got to say, by way of confession, that the only way that I got to know about Africville was through my sister Roxanne Richardson, who introduced me to you and Uncle Percy, and I had not heard about, and felt very much that I had been living under a rock for the last few decades of my life. And so, this too is, I think, it goes to our equity statement that the stories of us as Black people seem to be overshadowed and certainly buried, if not misrepresented. But I thank you so much for representing the Africville community today. I want to turn, if I may, to Auntie Beatrice and Auntie Bernice, and I want to ask you each a question, the same question, if I may. And welcome to the conversation. Welcome to Giving Black 2022. Thank you so much for joining us and taking time to share your stories. They're important to us. They mean so much to us to be able to hear your words as former residents of Africville, or at least growing up in Africville. And I want to ask the question, what was it like to grow up as a child in Africville? And what do you most remember? I'll ask you first, Auntie Beatrice.
Growing up as a child, it was nice, it was peaceful. We were safe. We played. We had chores to do after school, after we changed our clothes, of course, and got into our play clothes. And we are a community where you can knock on any door and get help, or just wait until your parents get home from work. My mother worked into the white community. She worked at Victoria General Hospital, which is still here in Halifax. Bernice's mother, she'll tell you, worked also in Halifax. And we had a compass. We could fish. We could pick our berries. We wanted to bake a pie. We'd just go in the woods, pick a cup or two of blueberries, and our mother or sisters would make a pie for us. It was nice. It was friendly. And one thing that nobody knows, but this community was never policed. We handled everything ourselves, and you never heard of us being raided or the police coming out to do whatever. We were a loving, abiding community ran by our seniors, which they did a good job. So I hand that over to Bernice now.
To me, growing up in Africa was like, I call it Freedom 55. Everybody in Africa, no one in Africa locked their doors. We went to church. I went skating on the brook between my house and the well, and I put my skates on and I skated like somebody, right, like a bat. And when you went to bed at night, you see those train tracks? Well, I always called it the lullaby. So if you were tired, the trains would come through all hours of the night and they would just put you to sleep. And if you came from school and you were hungry, you just go next door. Somebody would give you something to eat. And if you were dead, by the time your mother got home, everybody knew about it. And like going back to the fishing, like the boys would take us out on a raft and we'd have our fishing rods already done, do our bait, went out in the water trying to get flat eye, mackerel, any kind of fish, for a meal that night. And we're out on the yacht with the raft of the boys. You'd hear plunk, 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 and we didn't know what was going on. Then I turned around. I was the next one plunked into the water. So I went down in the water, and the first thing I seen was the green and white coral. And to this day, I don't swim. But anyway, needless to say, we like the boys. We went out with them again, and every time we went out, they did it to us. But then we'd go to church, we'd walk to school. I'm Catholic, Beatrice is Baptist, and I went to both churches, so it didn't really matter, you know. And every Sunday, if you came out and you were a visitor, they'd say, sit down and have something to eat. We had corned beef and cabbage, and we had blueberry grunt, or you have that famous gingerbread cake with the white lemon sauce. So, you know, we were taken care of. And the church was the heart of the community. And once they tore that down, it was just devastating. But when you were a child, you were seen and heard. And when we moved to town, our parents didn't dwell on us about the situation. We just went along for the ride, what you said. So when you went in town and you thought that you were going to all be together again, like our community, because it was all dispersed, and we had great moving trucks, which were the dump trucks that the city provided to move the people from Africville in. And when you got in town, everybody was dispersed. People that had the money from selling their property, houses, and all the other ones like us moved into city housing because we were renters. And so it took a while to get back together as a community. So that's why every year we have our annual picnic reunion on the ground. So people from all around come, plus the Africville community. That gives us a chance to get back together, catch up where we were, and to, you know, to relive Africville as it once used to be and keep our spirit alive. And we sell T-shirts and, you know, for the students, we did a cookbook, Beatrice and I. We did corned beef and cabbage, fish cakes and blueberry muffins, and just telling history about ourselves. So growing up, to me, like I said, it was Freedom 55, and I'm happy to be an Africvillian, and I'm still telling our story to keep our spirit alive.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you. You know, as you were mentioning all these lovely dishes, I was like, oh my gosh, yes, I wish I could be part of that feast for sure. Thank you. I have a question because I think, Auntie Denise, you said that your parents didn't talk much about the resettlement from Africville. And I want to get a sense of what were the emotions that your parents felt, though they may not have been vocal. How do you think this forced resettlement impacted them?
They were heartbroken. They were heartbroken about what happened to us. And you know the funny part about it? There's nothing you could do about it. It was here and now and done. You see? But they didn't dwell that on us because they didn't want us to live in the past and be hurt, you know, all your life. But we understood what they were saying. But, you know, like I said, seen and not heard. But we heard stuff. But we just kept it to ourselves, and we didn't discuss it with them. And they didn't discuss it with us. But we could see that they were hurting deeply.
And if you watch some of the clips of them relocating us, you'll see our foreparents crying. Why did they have to leave my home? Why did they take our home from us? And that's resonated with us growing up because that's how we got. And we knew they were more than heartbroken. They were devastated. You know, why would this man come and tell us to leave a home that we've been on for over 150 years and put us in a place that we were so separated and divided and couldn't come together until after 1982, when a former resident decided to form the Africville Genealogy Society, which Bernice and I are co-founding directors. And that society brings us together and allows us to camp on our once was homes for a weekend and every multiple 5 years for 10 days to reunite, find out what's happened to our families, our sisters, our brothers, our cousins, the community as a whole, and wondering why it had to happen. Us today, your living history today has that question. Why did it have to happen? Because we see no reason. We were okay out here. We lived fine out here. We had no services out here, no fire, no ambulance would come out here to us. And proof of that is my mother delivered had 15 kids, and her last child she delivered by herself. She was taught midwifery by her mother-in-law on my father's side. She wrapped the baby, cut the umbilical cord, got herself dressed, walked over 5 sets of train tracks to get to a police car that took her to the Grace Maternity Hospital. She handed the nurse the baby, got on a stretcher as the placenta came. And I witnessed that. I see my mother do that. For those services to come, and thank God we had the people in that community that took care of all our medical needs. Because my grandmother made a concoction that cured anything you had. But it was awful, but it worked. Onions and
molasses
on the stove, just simmering for us to take when we got a cold. And if it didn't kill you, it cured you. So obviously it cured us. And that's the way we lived in Africa.
And I want to comment on the water. Like you see in books, with the pump, you got this water before boiling. Well, Beatrice and I were both brought up on wells, and I'm still here.
And we're here.
So it couldn't have been that bad. God is good. He looked after us. After we left here, we're still moving on.
Yes, yes. We're all touched by your story. I know always when we hear stories that relate and resonate to us as Black people, there are some common themes of overcoming adversity through strength, through grace, and through the collective spirit that we have with each other that you so wonderfully describe. And I thank you for sharing that.
I just want to add one more thing. While the Black Summit was here, you will not believe the people that when we were doing the tours, tell us how they felt when they stepped on the land out here. It was just like the spirit engulfed them. They had a special feeling about Africa when they got here, like they lived here, like us.
Yeah.
Not particularly in what we went through, but just the feeling the spirit was there telling them, welcome.
Yes, thank you. I have to say, I felt the same. The thought that really was in my mind was the African continent. And I was just thinking about how so far away on the African continent, my Black ancestors actually lived and cohabited on that plot of land there in Africville. I felt tremendous connection. And I think what you describe is this universal spirit that we have as Black people, that no matter where we are, anywhere in the Americas, anywhere in the Caribbean, on the African continent, or even Europe or Asia, we identify in one way or another as one. We have diverse cultures and different histories, but we're united as African people. And so it was easy for me to connect, and I imagine easy also for others to connect as well who came through as part of the summit. So question then, where do we go from here? How do we help to rebuild and really ensure that Africville is known to many more people? What can our audience here do to help and support you on your future journey?
Percy, will let you start with that.
Go ahead, Juanita.
I'll let Percy start with that.
Well, one of the things that's happening right now is just the mere fact that hopefully this will help educate those that aren't aware of Africville and certainly spread the word, is that Africville is a story that should be shared globally. It's one of those stories that just happened in the 1960s. So it's still a very recent history. And as we move forward, this journey for Africville Heritage Trust, we have some issues, we have some concerns about where we will be, not 5 years from now, but 20, 25, 50, and 100 years from now. One of the things that was missing, sadly missing, as they looked at in the future of Africville, and they were making projections, was one around sustainability. For me, sustainability is a very vital part of where we're going to be 50 and 100 years from now. So we are in the process of revitalizing our strategic plan with a key towards sustainability and what our future is going to look like. So for your audience, is that I would hope that spread the word, not only to your brothers and sisters, but to anyone that's willing to listen, and encourage people to look up the story of Africville in ways that they can help Africville continue their journey forward. We've got so many things, so many balls in the air now. Government, we're doing this right now as I speak with very little in the way of government support at all levels. And I do not want governments to stand on any financial contribution they have made in the past because there was not a sustainability plan in place. And I heard earlier when I was listening to your broadcast here at the conference, and they were talking about government funding. And as a recovering politician, one of the things that I know that when we talk about funding, when governments talk about funding, they have a quota with respect to the amount of money that's targeted for Black communities. And I'm strictly speaking from past experiences. And it would seem that mainstream society, there's no such number. It's a bottomless pit. You can dig and dig and dig, and you're never going to hit bottom. However, for the Black community, certainly in the province of Nova Scotia, and I'm going to take a risk here and say for the government of Canada, that you can dig that hole when it comes to money in the Black community, and the bottom of the pit comes pretty quickly. And too often I've heard ministers of the Crown at various levels say, well, we've made a contribution to the Black community, now we can walk away from it. And I don't hear that same comment when it comes to the mainstream society. So we have to look at things with, I guess, look at with a lens that acknowledges the diversity of Canadian society and recognizes the flaws and the ills that certainly that even corporations and governments make when it comes to corporate sponsorship, corporate funding, government funding, and government cooperation. So the initial thing that I would say, and in response to your question, spread the word. Spread the word about Africville. It's a sad story, and even though this may sound like a contradiction, it's a sad story, but it's also a story of love. It's a story of love and of resilience and of the lives of a Black community, which has been repeated so many times here in the continent of North America.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Uncle Percy. I appreciate that. You're reminding us that ultimately this is a story of love, and we know also that in the story of love, things don't always run smoothly, but love is sustained by a commitment to continue to perpetuate it, irrespective of the kinks or the road bumps that may come before us. And that pretty much also resonates with our title of this section that we attributed to the conversation, an important conversation around Africville, the spirit of Ubuntu, the spirit that I am, because we
yes.
And so I thank you so much for sharing that. I want to ask others on the panel, any thoughts that come to your mind in addition to what Uncle Percy has shared as to how we may support you? Certainly we have spreading the word and also retaining in ourselves the memory and thinking with you about, well, this isn't just about the past and today, but what we really need to do is ensure the sustainability of Africville for generations to come. So how might we support you on that journey?
I love that we're in this forum because in the last year alone, I had a fantastic conversation with people who work at the Smithsonian and other curators of Black history and Black art. And we talked a lot about how Black stories, Black history, Black artifacts are not appreciated in the way that European pieces are. And that's why it takes so long for Black focused museums or institutes to get up and running. And the way that they become successful is by us investing in the products and the stories that are important to us. So that's why this forum is so unique and so wonderful, because the reality is we have to do it. We have to do it as Blacks from everywhere in the world, just as the story of Africville is how people took care of each other and made that community work. It's still very much the same in this global conversation as well.
Thank you, Sister Juanita. And as you were speaking, I was prompted to this very sad fact as well, that 75% of all historical African art sits between Europe and North America and parts of Asia, and not on the African continent itself. Now, of course, there is a movement to reclaim our historical art, and I think there are tremendous parallels with what you share as well. So thank you. I want to turn to just acknowledge a comment from Lisa, and I think you'll find this really encouraging. She says, I visited the Africville Museum 4 weeks ago with my mixed race children and white husband who grew up in Halifax. He remembers the stories that he now acknowledges as lies and racism that they were told as kids about Africville and the community. We had the pleasure of meeting Juanita and Mark, a grandchild of a former resident, and we are so grateful for the preserved history, stories, and resilience of the community. It was heartwarming to understand the love and the joy of the community.
Oh, beautiful.
How wonderful.
Beautiful.
How wonderful. When you hear tremendous statements and even feel tremendous statements of support, how does that make you feel? I want to start with Auntie Beatrice and Auntie Bernice. When you see and feel and hear the support that you have, how does that make you feel?
It's an overwhelming feeling, and we feel great about it. And also, now we know that people are really, really listening and listening to our stories.
Yes.
It warms the heart to know that our message is getting out there. And with people like you, it will continue to get out there, because it's a story that should be told and must be told. And as a Genealogy Society co-founder and director, we say, don't let happen to you that happened to us. Take care of your community, take care of your people, because government is outrageous. They're just telling, just take whatever they want, whenever they want.
And by hearing this, it shows that our spirit is still being carried on. Our spirit stays alive. We keep the spirit alive.
Yeah. Spirit stays alive for sure. Uncle Percy, how do you feel when you hear such positive encouragement and endorsement of the important work that you are involved in?
Well, it's certainly heartwarming, and it's those kind of stories. I think we stand here today on the shoulders of those that went before us, and I think I would be remiss if I didn't give a shout out to all the former residents of Africville, and to all of those that worked so hard and were so dedicated in the forming, and I'm talking now about the Africville Heritage Trust. And without those efforts, we may not be sitting here today having this conversation. So it's heartwarming. And again, a wee bit of a reiteration, but it strengthens the fact that I try to make when it comes to education. We can never have too much education when it comes to educating ourselves. We can't rely upon mainstream society to educate us about ourselves. We have to do it. What we see in our history books in Canada, in the public school system, is we've seen and witnessed a whitewash of history. We've got to tell the history the way it happened, the way it was, and it's got to be told from our perspective. And one of the things that used to annoy me is way back during the 60s and the 50s, and there were so many newspapers that were writing from a white perspective, and you never got the perspective from that of an African point of view. And so inappropriate, so wrong. And at least with Africville Heritage Trust, the Africville Genealogy Society, when it was originated, told the story from a perspective that was one of love and accuracy, and it wasn't whitewash.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you. Sister Juanita, how does it make you feel to hear and witness such positivity towards the Africville community?
I love it. I want to thank Lisa for that comment, because I can't count the times that people have, I've only been the executive director here since 2018, but I can't count the times that people have come in and said, my grandfather was part of that. He worked for the city at the time, and he was so embarrassed when he learned the other side of the story. And of course, people felt like they were agents of the time. They thought they were agents of change, that they were doing something good because that's the way it was promoted to them. Well, move these Black people out of this place. That's terrible. And it never occurred to them that the city had the resources to make it better for the people of Africville, just like they made it better for everyone else in Halifax. I love those comments. I love what people take away. I personally call it, in my view, the modern day, how the Grinch stole Christmas. The city thought that if you took away the land and the house, the church and the people, and spread them all apart, that they would not succeed in life. They would not continue to be Africvillians. They would not continue to grow and prosper and continue to tell their stories from their own perspective. But that's not what happened. All those things, as we know, people still come and rejoice with all those things not around them, and still find ways to connect and be who they were truly meant to be. So,
wow, I'm proud to say that the city was wrong. Delighted to say the city was wrong. Uncle Percy, Sister Juanita, Auntie Beatrice, Auntie Bernice, I wish we could continue this conversation. I feel blessed for having this conversation, though, and I thank you for the contributions you've made and your generosity and sharing. I want to leave you with a quote from our sister Cherie, who says, just made my donation online. We can all do our part to preserve our history. So, folks, please go to the Africville Heritage Museum and make your donation now. Let that be the first donation if you haven't donated before. We ourselves, as part of the Giving Black Conference, will be making a donation towards you and your work as well, and we're very proud to do that. But I get a sense that this is the very first step for us and our association, and we look forward to supporting you with all of your efforts to preserve, to promote, and to sustain Africville and its heritage and knowledge in our minds and hearts. Thank you.
Thank you. God bless you.
Thank you.
God bless.
If you were close, we give you a hug. Yes, here's the hug.
A virtual hug. Oh, here we go. Thank you so much. I will see you all soon, I hope. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wow. Gosh. I'm speechless again. So, Tracy.
I'm here.
Hi, welcome back. Welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you.
For you so far, especially our friends and brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles at Africville. How special is that? Eh?
You know, there's so much that I could say, so many phrases that really kind of sit right here, you know. I think it was Auntie Beatrice that said, God is good.
Amen. Yeah.
Right? God is good. And you know, Uncle Percy, when you say these are the stories, they're sad stories, but they're stories of resilience. I also feel like these are stories that have to be told, right? Our stories need to be told, and our stories need to be told by us.
Yes.
By us.
Yes.
And you know, Uncle Percy also says these stories are about love. And that brings us right into what our conference here is about, right? From mind to heart, and love, and the importance of love. And can I tell you, Mide, what I really love is our next interlude, poetry, going back to the words and the meaning of words. And I think you've kind of joked a couple times about saying Auntie Nicole Salmon is our resident poet, which for those of you who joined last year, you would remember Nicole shared poetry with us, and we have Auntie Nicole back this year. You know, special connection. We talk about food all the time, Auntie Nicole.
Yes.
And I'm waiting for my ackee and saltfish and fried.
It's coming.
And you know, I'm just saying I need it all. So
yeah, it's coming. It's coming. I give you my word. It's coming.
I believe you. Welcome and thank you for joining us again this year. We are looking forward to hearing from you, to feeling from you, from you to create that emotion that you always do. So I'm glad to see you this afternoon, or is it afternoon yet? Morning. And thank you for joining us.
Listen, Mide, Tracy, it's such a pleasure being here again, and I'm absolutely grateful to have the opportunity to participate. And you know, I think, you know, I have a handful of people that when they reach out and call, my answer is usually yes, right? So it's a great privilege. So I'm happy to be here.
Thank you, Nicole.
Welcome back.
Yes.
Thanks, my brother.
I'm just taking it all in right now, folks.
You all are in for a really great treat. Again, if you saw Auntie Nicole last year, and if you haven't, you're in for a sweet treat.
Thank you. Happy to be here, as I said, and happy to share some words. I think, Brother Mide, when I spoke to you last week, I sort of said, you know, it could be one, it could be two. Well, I'm happy to say I've come up with two, and really looking forward to sharing with folks.
Thank you.
So let me welcome everyone, and it's as I said, it's fantastic being here. I listened to Randall this morning, and he spoke of himself as an artist. My background, I certainly through the years haven't viewed myself as an artist. I was involved in creative things as a kid, but of course, you know, you get up and you get older, and the thought is that you put away childish things. I'm reconnecting to that person, that kid, that person who expressed themselves in ways that people don't necessarily expect. So my, you know, as I was thinking about the poems, and Midday reached out, and he told me a little bit about the conference and the thinking. I think my first question was, what's the theme, right? And he sort of said, well, you know, we're doing a piece on corporate social responsibility. There will be the Africville piece. And as I was thinking about it, I settled on the theme of reflections and projections. The first poem is called Mirror, Mirror, Please. Now we see through a glass darkly. Mirror, mirror, please. What's up with that vacuous look you are giving me? This face is one you've seen many times before. Your blank reaction hurts to the core. Mirror, mirror, please. Reveal all there is to see. Hide not all that must be revealed. Lesions of division have distorted our human vision. Mirror, mirror, please. This colonial prism has us believing there's not enough for all. Drawn into a vicious cycle, we all lose track, confined to a perverse zero-sum world. Mirror, mirror, please. Keep this paradox at bay. Should equity and justice still prevail when a good business case cannot be made? Then is it worth our efforts to pursue anyway? Mirror, mirror, please. Let us not harbor fear that removing the veil of delusion will lead to hysteria and confusion. Mirror, mirror, please. After all, we won't crumble and fall, unravel and fray, or quietly go away. Mirror, mirror, please. In suspended space, let's forget time and place. Reject notions that the world we seek is but a pipe dream. We can create the possibilities for better days to come. Mirror, mirror, please. Let me lay down, grant me my rest from grappling with peddled, self-deprecating messages conceived to rip the essential parts of me out of me. Constructed lies now fully exposed. Mirror, mirror, please. Remind us before it's too late. The hate we germinate, commemorate, look away, and placate will determine shared humanity's fate. Mirror, mirror, please. Bring balm to calm my weary mind as I clutch rich traditions ever close to my bosom. Levitate my soul, levitate my soul. Mirror, mirror, please. I plead as we wade into the unknown. Steady our steps. Give us faith. It's time to let it all go. Mirror, mirror, please. When I come back to you, face to face, what will I have to say? I'm at peace because you recognize the person reflecting back at me. Yes, that's me. And that's the first one. The second poem. So last year I did a piece called, I did two pieces. One was disembodied and the other one was embodied. And in the second one, I channeled the Louise Bennett Coverley, and she is a Jamaican icon. And as a kid growing up, she had a show called Ring Ding on television. And I got a chance, because I danced as a kid, I got a chance to actually perform a couple of times on her show. But she had a way of making Jamaican patois acceptable, right? So we're an English-speaking nation, but of course, we have our nation language, if you will, and patois became acceptable. So I joked last year that I thought about doing a patois piece. So I thought I'm going to deliver that this year. This piece is called, and let me put it this way. I know the audience, and hopefully the message will be clear, but this piece is called Them Their Words. In other words, them their words. There is power in them their words. You better use them with care, you hear? You know, I come to this understanding and knowledge about the power of words, how sometimes they bubble up and come from your gut, and other times you need to tread lightly. Me mean you need to rightly use your head. I have seen arguments that have come from use of some chosen word gems, and when they scatter, brows furrow, jawlines tense, and watch out for the vein them pon the side of the head, because if them pulse and swell, stand back and get out of the way. Whoever did come up with the saying, sticks and stones can break me bones, but words can never hurt me, knew nothing about what them saying. There is power in them dear words. They can stir up deep emotions, make you uneasy, and lead to enough trouble. They can stoke and rile up peaceful folks, poke fun at unsuspecting bodies who are mind them own business, and then the fallout is definitely no joke. There is power in them their words. They can infiltrate aggrieved and gullible minds that have been fed a series of lies. They can instigate and feed much hate and left things in a right awful state. There is power in them, their words. They can be used in many a good way too. Think of all the words when strung together, inspire and motivate in seriously positive ways. No, I'm not talking about them politicians spewing words for self-serving intentions, but more often than not, for them words a hook for a catchy, nice sounding jingle. I talking about them activists for freedom and liberation. The ones them that challenge the powers that be. The same one them that drop some wisdom and words of truth about all kind of oppression causing pure sufferation. They use words if followed up with action will benefit me and you and most everybody else too. May I talk about the people them that take a position against destruction, schisms, isms, and all type of phobias. And those times we feel nervous and afraid, for them words penetrate with backbone and give us the gumption to take a deep breath and draw lines in the shifting sand. Yes, there is power in them, their words. You better use them with care. You hear? Thank you.
Beautiful, amazing, beautiful. Oh, I love that. There is power in them, their words.
Yes, Leanne.
Auntie Nicole.
Auntie Nicole. Yes. I'm used to that, so that's good. That's good.
And I really want to welcome you all and thank Auntie Nicole and welcome you all to the Griot Hour. My name is Leanne Hanaway, and when MeDay and AgentsC kind of asked me to host this half hour that we have here, I had to actually understand what the word griot meant. You know, I'm born in Canada, but have West Indian roots in Trinidad and Jamaica, obviously all going back to the African diaspora. But a lot of me is just really figuring out my connection to, you know, my roots and all the way stemming back to Africa. So really, when Mide talked about what a griot is, it's really just a tradition of sharing oral histories. And we got a lot today with what was shared about Africaville. But, you know, sharing our stories through storytelling, music, poetry. I hope you've got a lot of that today. And we're going to continue that tradition in this next half hour. And what I invite you to talk about is the word philanthropy and what philanthropy means to you. You know, again, there is power in them, their words. I love that. Auntie Nicole for sharing that, because I think in my own experience, I've really thought that philanthropy was one of those words that was inaccessible. You know, it was for people who had a lot of money to decide who they would give their money to, who was deemed worthy of money. But I really think as we look at decolonizing that word, which, you know, Mide talked about the book, Decolonizing Wealth by Edgar Villanueva. How do we actually break down that word and have examples of how there are many ways to give, you know? In that book itself, it also talks about how we've kind of approached wealth from a colonizer mindset, where money is really used to divide, control, and to exploit. But when we look at things at more of from a decolonized perspective, how do we use money to connect, to relate, and belong? Which I really think really ties in well with Ubuntu and all our relations from the indigenous you know, background. But really, I invite you to kind of share your stories around what philanthropy, what, you know, wealth and what finance and giving and the spirit of generosity, what that really means to you. So again, in the chat, if you want to put your stories in there, put your comments in there, I will read them out, and we could just tell a couple stories around philanthropy. And being one to go first, I will share my own. I myself, like I said, I think really the example was really set for me for philanthropy and giving and generosity by my mother from Trinidad. And, you know, again, thinking about how we, not really coming from an economically advantaged background, the seeds of philanthropy were set really, really early, you know, giving at church, raising dollars for different initiatives, and really thinking about even how you budget. I'm an accountant, and my budget always has dollars to give to donations. But it's not just the money that we give, it's also how we spend our time and resources. So the Maya Angelou quote that I love, it's also in your program, you know, I may never be known as a philanthropist, but I certainly am a lover of mankind and will give freely of my resources. So that really, I take it to heart in examples of how I give. In my career, I've always had time for giving back to community, sharing my resources. Again, but the example set by my mother, she gave, but also served as chair of our housing cooperative. So I got a lot of exposure to volunteer work and how that cannot, being on the ground, living in that housing cooperative, as well as my mom being the chair, you know, really giving back to the communities in which we serve. As another way of being philanthropic, and really to look at that as another mechanism for giving. It's not just about the dollars. I think we heard that earlier in the CSR panel. So when I went to university, I served on my housing cooperative. I lived in cooperative housing. I've served on a number of boards, including boards that are rooted in the Black community. So giving my resources as a CPA, giving my resources as just someone with lived experience and wanting to help other people from my community when it comes to philanthropy. So I invite you again to just really think about what philanthropy means to you, and invite you to share that in the chat. And we're going to share a couple more stories, and I wanted to see if we had, just in the chat, if we have some stories that people would like to share. And if not, I would also like to invite some members to share their stories as well. So I think we have Sebastian Campbell, who's a member of the AgentsC team, who's also going to share a little bit about his story of philanthropy. And yes, so Sebastian.
Thanks, Leanne, so much. I really appreciate it. And I completely agree with what you talk about in terms of time and resources. I don't think philanthropy can be dumbed down to just giving money away. There's so much giving that's done in our society today, and it doesn't need to be made through any form of monetary. It can simply just be about giving to someone else or giving to others and being there for others. And I also appreciate you touching on your university experience, because that's where I'm going to talk a lot about today. I'm super excited and I'm really appreciative that I have the space to talk and share my story. And I just want to say, from everything I've seen in the conference so far, I've been truly touched by all the messages, and I thank everyone for being a part of this. So I recognize that I am incredibly fortunate to be able to attend university, and I have made many incredible friends and have had many unique experiences in my first 2 years. However, like in any institution, there can always be problems that need to be discussed or eventually solved. And one of the situations that I've experienced in my time is a webpage that was created about my school that was called Stolen By. Within this webpage, there were many anonymous individuals who would share their stories about mistreatment or anything they experienced that was negative in the school space. And upon reading a lot of them, I noticed there was a consistent trend with African-American individuals, Black people, who discussed how they felt isolated, how they experienced consistent racism and exclusion within the community, enough so that it made them dread attending classes, made them feel isolated, and in some cases even made them drop out of the program. When I see things like this, it makes me really sad. It makes me upset that we live in a society that has to deal with these things. But I know that I, as a person who feels this way, can step up to lead change and be someone who is changing. Leanne, you talked a lot about some of the committees that work towards some of these issues. And I, too, being on the basketball team at my university, have access to some leadership committees that focus on equity, diversity, and inclusivity. And I'll be looking to push these narratives going forward in the coming years while still at university and even past that. I also have found that making donations, no matter how big or small, do still make a difference. And I am very proud to say that I have made donations to the Black Health Alliance and Black Lives Matter because of their continued input and their ability to create awareness. And I think creating awareness is the most important thing, because it allows for individuals to understand what's happening in our society. And I also wanted to shed light on the fact that I have had many influencers in my life who are Black people that have made me the person I am today. I think to my first basketball coach, Shane, who taught me what it means to work hard and be a difference maker and never be content with myself. I think to one of my favorite teachers in high school, Miss Murray, who taught me the importance of community service and gratitude and got me on a trip out to Ecuador to help build a school in remote locations. And I even think more recently to Madej and Tracy, who I've had the pleasure of working with and have been able to share many unique perspectives that have contributed to my learning and strategy and nonprofit. For all of this, I'm happy to give back. I'm happy to give my time and resources because I believe it to be a necessity, and I hope that everyone else feels the same way. I'm truly, truly grateful for letting me speak, share a little bit about my story, and back to you, Leanne. Thank you.
Thank you, Sebastian. So many themes in there. You can see there's a lot of commonality in how we give. And there's some comments in the chat too that I want to highlight as well. The first one comes from Tammy. My Trini grandmother, who grew up in poverty, used to make roti and share with people in the community who had less. Philanthropy really can take many forms that should be all valued. So, so true. I mean, even in my own upbringing, I think about, sending barrels home and, sending home like really good things like cereal was one of the things that was really asked for. And you would always send a couple because it wouldn't just go to your family. So-and-so would come over to Auntie's house and, it would get shared, and all that got shared. It was just really rooted in how we did things. I'm thinking of I'm seeing another comment here from Roxanne. My parents were the first of many to make their journey from Trinidad to Canada 50 plus years ago. Growing up, I don't recall a time we didn't have a friend or family member who stayed with us until they became more established. Again, sharing of not only money, but time and resources, helping other folks make the immigration journey to Canada, which is certainly not easier, but making it easier where you can stay with people until you get your footing. So again, we really do need to see the philanthropy in all of us and really examine that word and have it be really more broad-based. I'm thinking there's another comment in here from Chrislyn. I think about my parents and the aunties and uncles in the South Asian tradition who cook and share food with families experiencing trouble or setbacks. I think of parents in my community who share gently used items and helpful advice with new parents around them. I think of neighbors on the other side of the fence sharing fruit from their cherry trees. I love it. So beautiful in terms of, again, the generosity and the giving and really being philanthropic. And from Roger, I have here, I learned about philanthropy by my grandmother growing up in Trinidad. I found memories of learning about giving and helping others in need at church. I was taught to make an offering at the church every Sunday. Personally, it's giving of your time and what you can afford. This learning and practice was instilled in me from a very young age. And we got a lot. I love it. So I'm just going to continue to share. From Petra, my maternal grandparents had sponsored many of our relatives from Grenada from the 60s to the 80s. Due to my great-grandmother's migration to Montreal in the 1920s, my grandfather's family was better able to help his village. Yeah, there's often that, not just here, but giving back and giving to communities outside, giving to other countries. We're all together, all our relations. And again, in the spirit of Ubuntu, we're all together in this. And I'm going to share just two more. We have from Ani. My dad, whom I love so much and miss so much, he is a doctor in Ecuador. He sometimes would barter his services and receive payment from his patients in the form of a case of mangoes or a live turkey. That's philanthropy. And I'm not going to try that. Hacer el bien sin, no, you know what? I'm not going to do it, but the translation is here. Thank you, Ani. Doing good without looking at whom. I love that. I love that so much. And Maria shares, I was a sponsor child in Nicaragua before coming as a refugee to Canada with my mother. Nicaragua has been the second poorest country in the Western Hemisphere, right behind Haiti, for a long time now. So poverty release is very real and present in my everyday life. With the majority of my family, it's still living over there. Coming from an impoverished background really pushes you to build community and find creative ways to help your community. Yes, and that really stems to, it's really the folks who are having that lived experience that are in the best ways to come up with philanthropic endeavors and how that money should really be spent. So I got one more story to share, and I'm going to invite Neka Allen to talk a little bit about her philanthropy story. And so hopefully she can she can join us and tell us a little bit about what philanthropy and that spirit of generosity means to her. Thank you, Nneka.
Hi, Leanne. So much. It's great to be here with you. Good morning, everyone from the West Coast of Canada. My name is Anika Allen, and I'm pleased to be wrapping up or closing out your Griot Hour. As many of you know from the book Collecting Courage, I began my career at the Amherstburg Freedom Museum. And this is where I discovered that I too am a Griot, like so many of my ancestors. I come from a long line of women who mastered the craft of sharing narratives and stories. And when my brother Midday asked me to share a story today about the generosity of the Black Canadian Fundraisers Collective through our creation of the Black Philanthropy Fund, I immediately began thinking of the long legacy of giving by Black women. And because my family has been in Southwestern Ontario for nearly 200 years, I must begin with the Hour a Day Study Club, which was originally known as the Mothers Club. 9 years ago, when I lived in my hometown of Windsor, Ontario, I belonged to the Hour a Day Study Club. It is one of the oldest women-led charities in Canada, founded in 1934. The club was led by Black mothers who were daughters of the Underground Railroad. As the name suggests, the women pledged themselves to devote an hour a day to individual reading, analysis, to better fortify themselves and their children and their community. This is a picture of some of the original members of the Hour a Day Study Club. In 1968, the club began giving scholarships to descendants, graduating from high school and continuing with post-secondary training or education. One of the first of 4 recipients to receive a scholarship in 1968 was my aunt, Madam Justice Beth Allen of the Superior Court of Ontario. And in 2013, we can actually, am I controlling these slides? Yes, I am. There's a picture. That's my aunt there on the far right. And in 2023, my daughter, Destiny, was a recipient of the scholarship as well. Today, she's an environmental scientist here in Vancouver, and the Hour a Day Study Club continues to award several bursaries each year to deserving students who are descendants of the Underground Railroad. While I experienced the multi-generational brilliance of Black women of the Hour a Day Study Club through my membership, I'm amazed when I look at the longevity of their community organizing. In 1954, club members worked with Walter Perry to plan the 1954 Emancipation Day commemoration, which is a freedom celebration. It's also known as the greatest freedom show on earth. And this celebration also commemorated Windsor's centenary. A committee of 50 women from Windsor and Detroit brought Mary McLeod Bethune and Eleanor Roosevelt to speak. Here's a photo of that day. And in the picture is my great-grandmother, Genevieve Allen, on the far right, who was a club member. The backdrop to this photo is the Brown versus Board of Education, which was a landmark decision of the US Supreme Court, in which the court ruled that the US state laws establishing racial segregation in public schools was unconstitutional. The photo speaks to the impact that Black women had and continue to have in the community today. I don't believe Black women gathering and organizing is simply to support each other. We do it to affect change, to change policy and impact legislation, to create greater access, greater freedom, greater recognition. Out of necessity, Black people have historically created their own freedom. We intimately know and understand rejection, and therefore have a deep commitment to creating connection in our community. This is where our philanthropy and activism always meet. Here is a picture of the women of Emancipation Day in Windsor, also known as the greatest freedom show on earth. This work and this activism is still happening today and emerging with a new force. In the fundraising profession, there has been an emergence of several groups looking to support and serve the needs of fundraisers of color. We have the Rooted Collaborative, the African American Development Officers Network, the Fabulous Female Fundraisers, and our group, the Black Canadian Fundraisers Collective, which is a collective of Black identifying people rooted in the historic tradition of Ubuntu, I am because we are. Here are some pictures of the women and some of the men who belong to some of these groups, mainly our collective. At the outset of our work as a collective, several years ago, we immediately looked to invest in the community. We wanted to know how best to support fundraisers like us. This desire, which is evident in the Black community and especially among Black women, gave birth to the Black Philanthropy Fund in 2019, which supports the continuing education of Black Canadian professionals. To date, through our partnership with Carleton University, we have made 7 awards available to students completing their Masters in Philanthropy and Nonprofit Leadership. These awards have covered half of the tuition costs of these students. This is Sherilyn, Ferry, Walter, and Holly. These were our 2021 recipients, and we are excited to shortly introduce to you our 2022 recipients. As a collective, we believe deeply in investing in the change we want to see in this world. This is very consistent with all the experiences I've had with Black women activists. Our philanthropy, it's practical, it's consistent, it is historic. We give from the love we have for ourselves and for our people. When I think of all the ways that Black women's generosity has saved me, I quickly realized that I wouldn't be here without it. And it is no mistake that in 1934, the Our Day Study Club was investing in our education. And today, the Black Canadian Fundraisers Collective proudly joins with these mothers to continue this rich tradition. The survival and upliftment of our people has always been a priority. In Madam C.J. Walker's Gospel of Giving, my friend and dear brother Tyrone McKinley Freeman wrote, contrary to conventional thinking, American, and I would say also Canadian philanthropy is not rooted in Andrew Carnegie and his elite peers. It is rooted in the traditions of living and sharing that were the stuff of daily family and community life from the country's foundations. He goes on to say, if Black women led intersectional lives, it follows that their philanthropy would be intersectional as well, meaning not limited to one type of gift, institution, societal sector, or approach. Rather, it is diverse, multifaceted, overlapping, intersectional, and reflective of their embodied identities. It cannot be discerned by consulting the rules of tax donation deductibility or formal accounting procedures. It is an amalgamation, understood only through their lived experiences. The only other thing I can say is, in short, I wouldn't want to know a world without the philanthropy of Black women. Thank you.
Wow, so incredibly powerful. Thank you for sharing that. And especially for, sharing the point of view of Black women, and the intersectionalness that we have, I really do feel sometimes that it's just taken for granted that that is Black women's work, and how do we carve a proper space within philanthropic circles for Black women? So, yeah. Yes. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you, Leanne.
Thank you, Anika. Thank you. So we are going to move on, but before we do, there was a couple more stories within the chat that I wanted to just highlight and we can think about. The first one is from Brittany. And she says, I think philanthropy at its heart is looking after your community and advocating for change. Unfortunately, Western culture makes it so business orientated, which is really a byproduct of capitalism. If we looked at philanthropy as our duty as a member of community, I think things would be very different. I think most people start out in philanthropy as very community centered. So I hope we keep it that way and recognize that we also have a global community to care for too. Yes, I love that. It's really much looking at philanthropy in that decolonized lens. You know, how do we connect? How do we relate? How do we make sure our money heals us so that we belong? And really using our philanthropy in that vein. And there's just one more story from Zamani. I definitely agree that seeds of philanthropy are not just about the money we give, but the giving freely of resources. Sometimes, though, the giving has become a trap where people begin to expect us to do things for free. And it's an interesting conversation to have within the context of colonialism, where free labor was taken. In my own life, the giving of time, expertise have conditioned me to also undervalue my contributions and know where to start when it comes to deciding to pay myself and how much to compensate myself. So much more to say here, but that's as fast as I can type at the moment. So really unpacking these things, it's not really any small things. Even in my day work, we talk a lot to women, particularly Black women, about really unpacking wealth and what that really means, because it's definitely a different definition than what we've been conditioned to think it is. So I want to thank you all for sharing your stories of generosity, your stories of philanthropy, and how you really look at giving. And I'm going to turn it over to Mide. You know, so many conversations we've been having here, Mide. So I know we're moving on to talking about other things. But what were your thoughts on what was shared in the Griot Hour?
Thanks, Leanne. I just want to thank you for being just a tremendous host of our hour, 30 minutes, really. The Griot 30 minutes doesn't have the same ring as the Griot hour, all right? But that being said, thank you for hosting. Thank you to all of our lovely contributors who shared their thoughts in the post. Every time you share your story about philanthropy, what you do is educate us about what philanthropy is. And so I think, you know, there was somebody who said, you know, that philanthropy is a byproduct of capitalism and Western ideology as it currently stands now. And I guess what we're trying to do is look at other perspectives, other translations, other cultures, and see how and what philanthropy means to them. And I think from Sebastian's story as a young person about the philanthropy that he has benefited from, and actually it has now a model of practice for, to Sister Neka's story, I think just about the heritage of Black philanthropy here in Canada as well, and even your story, I think all resonates with me, and I know with our audience as well. So thank you. It's always encouraging. I can think of no better subject to discuss than the subject of generosity.
Yes, I wholeheartedly agree.
So thank you. I think I'm going to see you on the other end just as we try and wrap things up, and I look forward to speaking with Tracy as well. But for now, we have our rest and wellness session. And in the Yoruba language, we use the term isimi, and isimi is essentially our word for relaxation. It has connotations that point to peace, to a settling and a calming down. And we have seen and heard so many things today, rich context and conversation. I think that has certainly stirred my emotions, has caused me to really think And what we want to do now is give each other just the time to recognize that and dwell in this time and space, a time of reflection. And I know no other person who is expert in helping others to achieve calm than my friend and yoga instructor, Kamel Olside. And Kamel, I want to welcome you today. Great to see you. Thank you for joining us at the Giving Black Conference. And I hand over the mic and the camera to you. Welcome.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Mide, for that wonderful introduction. It is such an honor to be here, just witnessing the brilliance, the power, and the generosity of this community, as well as being able to end the Giving Black Conference with, as Mide so put it, Isimi, or mindfulness practice. So this practice is really an opportunity for you to slow down and to make that shift from doing, whether presenting, listening, or participating, to simply being. So let's just take a moment to create a comfortable seated shape for yourself. If it's possible, sit with your feet connected to the floor. And sit in a way that embodies alertness, but also ease. Allow your shoulders to fall away from your neck. Relax your arms. And rest your palms on your thighs. Now note that there's no pressure to be rigid or stiff or still during this practice. In fact, you have the freedom to adjust in any way throughout that brings you some type of comfort. When you feel satisfied with the shape that you're in, soften your gaze. Or completely close your eyes if you feel safe enough to do so. And become aware of what you are experiencing right now. You may even take a moment to acknowledge any fatigue, perhaps any tension, or maybe thoughts that are swirling through your mind from this presentation. And allow yourself to surrender to this call for both integration and rest. And in your surrendering, notice that you're breathing. Let your breath show up as it is. Just experience the air coming in through your nose and the breath flowing out of your nostrils. Notice where you feel the movement of your breath. You might notice the rising of your chest, the rising of your belly, Feel your breath rise and recede like a wave. Like the way in which the ocean meets the shore. Now, the next time you inhale, take a long, steady breath in through your nose. And then exhale slowly and smoothly. And try that again. Inhale slowly. Exhale, feel your body relax with the out breath. And we'll do that one more time. Breathe in. There's no rush. And breathe out. Now release control of your breath. And return to what feels natural. With a felt sense of gratitude for your breath and for this moment. I once read that gratitude is like breathing in and allowing yourself to be touched by the goodness of this world. While generosity, on the other hand, is like breathing out and sensing your mutual belonging and being able to offer your care. So just as your exhale cannot exist without your inhale, your generosity cannot exist without gratitude. The spirit of giving, as we know, is based on being able to feel and embody gratitude. So as you continue to breathe, to be mindful and present to your breath, take some time to explore some of the things that you are grateful for in this space. Now, perhaps you discovered gratitude for the interconnectedness of this community. Gratitude for your resilience and our collective resilience as people. Gratitude for your ancestors, for the challenges they have endured to bring you to where you are now. Gratitude for the challenges that you are now faced with as you set the stage for future generations. Gratitude for your triumphs. Observe where you feel the sensation of gratitude in your body. If you currently feel nothing, just acknowledge that you feel nothing. If you are experiencing sensation, feel the nature of these sensations. Keep breathing into what you feel. Continue to soften into whatever you feel. One breath at a time. Now bring your awareness to the top of your head. Take a breath in and out. Imagine the energy of gratitude right at the top of your head. Let the top of your head relax in this feeling. Allow your attention to drift to your shoulders, your arms, and even your hands. Experience this peaceful and relaxing feeling at your shoulders, arms, and hands. And moving down your chest and belly. Allow this part of your body to soften with the feeling of expressing gratitude. Now notice your spine. Breathe the energy of gratitude into your spine. Note the steadiness and balance of your pelvis. And feel gentle waves of gratitude flowing into your hips and legs. Experience its motion at your feet. Feel your feet being grounded with gratitude. And then sense your entire body as if your body were being bathed in this calm, kind energy of gratitude. Take a few more breaths here. Make note of how you feel. When you are ready, if your eyes were closed, and gently open your eyes. I think someone said in the presentation that I am because we are. And there's this beautiful saying in meditation that when you sit in meditation, you don't just sit for yourself, but you really sit for everyone else in the world. Because when one of us is liberated, we are all liberated. Thank you so much for being open to this practice and for ending the conference with this isimi, this peacefulness.
Wow. Kamel, thank you. Thank you so much. I feel so rested. You don't realize how much you're kind of carrying with you until you stop and achieve that isumi, that calm, that rest. And I thank you for guiding our wellness time together. Quick question for you, as the founder of Everyday Yogi, how can people reach out to you if they want to benefit from more instruction from you?
Thank you, Mide. I just dropped it in the chat. So my Instagram is @KamelAlseed, which is just my full name. And Facebook is also the same tag or handle.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. See you soon.
See you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay. Wow, I hope everybody is feeling as chilled and relaxed as I am right now. I feel after we close at 12:30, I may very well go and take a nap, which is not a bad thing, actually. It's a very good thing. So, okay. Something special happened. We didn't want to promote or advertise this part of our conference because it was so special that I didn't think, or we didn't think, kind of, marketing it would be would do justice to how important we felt this conversation was. And so we wanted to give you several treats in the Giving Black conference, and here's a treat for you. We're about to show you a video which forms a part of the Giving Black podcast. Now, the Giving Black conference happens once a year, and we'll share next year's date with you in a moment. But we were also thinking about, well, what happens between those 12 months? We kind of go somewhat silent and carry on with our day-to-day lives. I'm blessed that I work in the world of philanthropy, so I can continue to be engaged, but I don't necessarily have direct communication with most of you who are attending the conference today. So we set up the Giving Black podcast, which we are billing as the world's first podcast dedicated to all things global Black philanthropy. The podcast will be launched today. If you go onto the Giving Black website, www.givingblack.ca, you'll be able to access it. It's currently on Spotify. And we'll be getting it up on Apple very shortly. But our first guest was with Canada's most prominent, I would say, and well-known Black philanthropist, the Right Honourable Michael Jean, Governor General of Canada. If I started to talk about it, I would go on and on and on. I'm going to pause and just allow you to see a snippet of the conversation that we had with Madame Michael Jean of the Michael Jean Foundation.
Faith.
I love that. I appreciate you so much for taking the time to speak and share.
Thank you.
What a fascinating story you have from your young age, wanting to go to the presidential palace to really champion the rights of oppressed people, to coming here and really
as a young refugee,
and really setting a path and blazing a trail as a journalist, knowing also that much of your history is steeped in the phenomenal examples set by your mother, your father, and your
so many other women,
so many other
movement. Oh, yes.
And your first statement as Governor General that you are the descendant of slaves.
Yes. And sitting with Her Majesty the Queen for our first meeting, okay, because it's a tradition, before swearing in, you have this courtesy moment, that conversation, and saying, Your Majesty, how amazing. Look at us here sitting together.
Wow.
My ancestors were slaves.
Wow.
And you are the descendant of an empire of slavers.
The largest empire in the world of enslavers. Yes.
And I said, here we are, and I'm free.
Wow.
And to be free yourself, you need to see others being free, And it was this tete-a-tete was fundamental, because this is how we start our conversation.
This is the beginning.
This is the beginning. And she herself had to adapt to the change of times.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
But making freedom of speech yours and starting a conversation on something that is fundamental, taking the full measure of how far we come.
Yes.
Right? And where we are now, and what it means in terms of, with that, what can we do? We have that shared history on, two different shores.
Yes.
But look.
Yes. And I'll throw in another observation. Both very powerful and influential women.
Yeah. And we were sitting there as two women talking to each other, having a conversation and saying, this is where we come from. Yeah. A long way. But there's still a long way to go. You see? Yes. So I think we should never shy away from a possibility of doing that. We have to do it all the time. That's why I like to encourage young people and to respect their courage also, because it's a lesson of courage every time I work with them. When they speak about what they're experiencing. And I see their leadership, and I see their strength, and I see also the pain. I see the pain. I see the pain. But with that pain, you can cultivate something. It's like
an inner strength.
An inner strength. Yeah. We will never stop that conversation.
I know.
I know.
I think this is what we call a wrap. A W-A-R-P.
Until next time.
Until next time. Absolutely.
But it's exciting, isn't it?
Oh.
Yeah.
Goodness. Yeah.
You know that song, that beautiful song? It's, you may think I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one.
Oh, yes.
Imagine.
That's John Lennon.
Yeah, John Lennon.
Yes.
We need to imagine how the world can be, not could be, can be.
Can be.
Oh, yeah.
And on that note, thank you for inspiring us to dream about what the world can be. Madame Michael-Jean, activist, journalist, phenomenal all-round human being, and Governor General of Canada.
Michael. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wow.
I still am overjoyed. And hey, Tracy, yeah, still am overjoyed about that phenomenal conversation, which everyone will be able to hear more about on the Giving Black podcast. Our plan is to have 12 podcasts between now and Giving Black 2023, which is on August the 10th, 2023. Please mark that date in your calendars. More research, more great discussions about Black philanthropy. I'm going to pause because I never like to be the one to have the final word. Tracy, Leanne.
I was just going to say, I was privileged to kind of be in the backdrop of while we were having the conversation with Madame, and gosh, just being in her presence, but also making sure that our stories are continuing to be told. That was just one example, one podcast. And the reason why we have the Giving Back podcast is an extension of our conference, but to make sure that our stories continue to be told. So you'll continue to hear from us, and we want to hear from you as well.
Thank you. And I want to thank the Avast Foundation, who have supported us to create, produce, and launch the Giving Black podcast. And once again, it's on www.givingblack.ca website. We'll, of course, share more information with you. Leanne, what has been, I guess, your main takeaway from our short time together today?
Yeah. Well, first of all, wow, boom, like, your first guest on the Giving Black podcast is the Right Honorable Michael Jean. Like that is amazing. So what I really am taking away from this is, we've have these legacies of philanthropy and, everybody sharing about what inspires them about philanthropy, still in some of the ways that it needs to change. But most importantly, that the conversation will be continued and that we're taking what we've learned here today and we'll see more of it on the podcast. And it's just really inspiring, hearing all the stories, hearing the stories of, and hearing the stories and also in different formats and different ways. Very inspiring, very powerful.
Brilliant. We are sadly over time. And I have so many people to thank.
Gosh, so many.
I cannot end this show without at least thanking Roxanne Richardson.
Mm-hmm.
And the story being that directly after Giving Black 2021, Roxanne Richardson got in touch with me and said, you have to do this again. And we didn't have it in mind to repeat the conference, really, but Roxanne had not only encouraged us to continue with the Giving Black theme, but she has been a volunteer behind the scenes in innumerable ways, just supporting today's event. So thank you. There have been so many people from Neon One to TELUS to the Avast Foundation, staff at AgentsC, you know who you are.
I'll say Jules from Africa and Me for our t-shirts.
For the t-shirts, for the swag. Stick around for another 30 or so minutes or however long in our breakout session where we're going to be giving away some swag as well.
One main one, sorry, Mide, that we have to make sure that we thank the audience.
Well, I was just going to do that. Yes. Got to thank everybody who tuned in, registered, and is showing their support for Giving Black. Thank you so much for your time today. Thoughts of you in developing this conference was that you would take away something that would be rewarding and enriching to your souls. And I very much hope that that has been the case. I don't want to have the last word, but I do want to say I look forward to seeing you all next year. And thank you for spending time with us. Leanne or Tracy, over to you.
Just that, sorry, Leanne, I want to make sure that we say there's a link in the chat for a live networking session. If you have the time, please come and join us. We'll continue the conversation there. Just click on the link and follow the instructions. And I will leave the last word to lovely Leanne.
Oh, wow. Well, thank you. Again, just like the philanthropy is in all of us. So let's continue the conversation. This has been an amazing experience.
See you all soon.